we're good to start recording. All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 20th, 2023 Design Review Board meeting. First up is roll call.
Design Review Member Rosner, just had a moment here. I was like, wait.
Here.
Malat
Here.
and D'Orzio. Am I saying that right? O'Dorsio. See, I forgot the other part. O'Dorsio and Chair Chong.
Here.
For present, Design Review Board Member Kim is absent tonight.
All right, thank you. Now is a chance for any oral communications for any items that are not on this evening's Design Review Board agenda. If you have anything, please come forward. All right. Could we also check on Zoom to ensure that nobody has used, if you're on Zoom and you would like to address the Design Review Board for any items not on this evening's agenda, if you could use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen.
I will give like 10 seconds for people to wave their hand. I'm seeing none.
All right. Next up is staff briefing.
Good evening, board members. I wanted to alert you to the fact that we will be having a special Design Review Board meeting on August 10th. I believe you have been asked about a quorum, and that special meeting will be to discuss and review the development and design guidelines for hillsides. So we can include those as part of our new standards for any new housing on hillsides as part of the housing element process. So I'm hoping we can all do that. It's the same kind of discussion we did when we worked with the consultants on the downtown. So that's really all I have. And I'm hoping that we can have full attendance that evening.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now for adoption of the minutes from the June 15th Design Review Board meeting. Does anybody have any edits? All right. Is there a motion to adopt those minutes? So moved. All right. Could we have a vote for all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. All right. So with that, we adopt the minutes from the June 15th Design Review Board meeting. And we move to our consent calendar. We have one item on this evening's consent calendar, which is 2088 Paradise Drive. Is there anybody that has anything for, so we would open it up. Do we need to open it up public or
yes,
take a motion?
Excuse me. Yes, you would open it up for a public comment.
All right. Is there any public comment for 2088 Paradise Drive this evening? If you do, please come forward. And limit your comments to 3 minutes. Anybody for Paradise? Nope. All right. So with that,
we should check on.
I'm sorry.
Zoom
Check
as
on
well.
Zoom. Still getting used to hybrid meetings. Yeah, if you could use the raise hand feature if you're on Zoom and would like to comment on 2088 Paradise Drive.
I see one hand raised. I will promote her to speak.
Okay. Thank you. And if you could state your name and address when you begin speaking.
Yes, do you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, hi, Noreen Slavan. I didn't think I was going to talk. I didn't think there was a moment for this, so I don't have anything prepared, but you've seen a bunch of letters from me, and we just want to make sure that our concerns, we don't feel like everything was addressed at the last meeting, and just want to make sure at least, we're not happy with the overall a foot away construction, obviously. But probably primarily would be that ADU deck a foot away, and not much we can do about that if you approve the new mass, because that's putting it there because it's built on top of it. But we spoke with the owner about the wraparound porch, that it looks like it really could be a place just for long-term for storage and unsightly things. There's no guarantee that potted plants on that 2-3 foot wide wraparound porch outside would be kept. And then the beach area, just want to make sure there's time given to look at that patio at the beach area. They're proposing a new patio be built. And I think the Coastal Commission might have something to say about it as well, but further into the water, and our bigger concern is further toward us as well. We're 8 feet away there, and we just want to make sure that beach is protected. The water flow at high tide already throws up onto our porch. And if there's a hard wall there, I asked him if it'd be on piers or cement. My fear is that there's just going to be more water funneled up and deteriorating the beach and funneling up onto our deck. So I just want to make sure that gets looked at as well. And again, overall, just not happy about 1 foot away construction, how that realistically, I know it's done in the city all the time, but we don't do it in Marin. And we're just really, really concerned about that process and how it affects the people living there. And long-term, we hope to move back there, and long-term, just access for maintenance to both the properties, especially their property. There's just no space between us on their side. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else on the Zoom call that would like to make any comments? Please use the raise hand function.
I see no more hands.
Thank you. So with that, I think we'd be looking for, there was 2 of the 4 members this evening. There were 2 members that were at the last meeting. I've had a chance to review the video.
Yeah, likewise, I reviewed last meeting's video and visited the site, so I feel properly equipped to make that role.
So with,
I'd like to make a comment, if I may, regarding the beach and the small setback.
So right now, what we have before you is just the consent calendar. You can take a motion to remove it from the consent calendar and have a discussion on it, or what we'd be doing here is just adopting the consent calendar would be the appropriate thing to do. But if we want to have a discussion about it, we should remove it from the consent calendar.
I would move to remove it from the consent calendar briefly. For comments from the board on if anybody else has any comments.
So there's a motion to remove it from the consent calendar, which I believe we take a vote on removing it from the consent calendar. So all those in favor of removing it from the consent calendar?
Clarification, this allows us to. This then allows us for discussion now.
I believe this would remove it from the consent calendar, meaning that this applicant would not be able to get an approval for this item this evening. Or is that?
No, that's not the case. It would be removed from consent calendar. And then the board would be able to deliberate further, discuss potentially the resolution that was drafted for this meeting. We would open it up for public comment, but there wouldn't be a presentation by an applicant or rebuttal period as there would be, because we've already had the public hearing and that has been closed.
And then there could be a motion to put it back on the consent calendar, essentially.
No, we would just have a normal vote. We would just
Okay.
vote for, whatever the board, if they wanted to vote to approve the draft resolution or make
Okay, all
additional
right. So it doesn't change
conditions.
that. All right, thank you. So again, motion to remove it from the consent calendar. So we have a discussion. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. All right, so with that. Lead us off, Jim.
I wanted to address the issue of the large number of variances on this project and explain why the board is making, or at least I'm making my approval known on this project. Our planning code does not accommodate buildings essentially built on a cliff. It's designed for lots that are normal in the sense that they have a slope or flat, but they are in a normal range of areas. This is built on a cliff, and it's built with pre-existing buildings on one side and a utility easement on the other side. The utility easement is squishing the building toward the proposed building toward the existing apartment building. And I think, honestly, the architect and the applicant have done a remarkable job of getting a very fine project in here, and they're giving a gift to the community in the sense that they're opening up the main level, the driving level, to a view, which I wish many more of the Paradise Drive buildings in this area had been able to do. So for that reason, I think we've addressed the issues and the variance issues for my way of thinking. I can make the findings still for all of them. And I think it's a good thing that we've gone this far on it, for this project. I would still vote for it, and I would vote to pass the consent calendar item when we get to it.
Yeah, I'd like to second and agree with all your comments. I mean, there's a number of large homes on very small lots. The whole reason I ended up on the design review board is I appeared for a project of my own where, you know, the square footage of the house was larger than the square footage of the lot. And that's kind of the cases for a lot of these homes that are built on the side of the hill. And the only way that you can actually even build in the lot is to have some of the variances that are being asked for here. Anybody else have any comments? All right, so with that, we'd also open it up to the public. If there's any public comments here in the room or on Zoom, please use the raise hand feature for 2088 Paradise Drive.
I don't see any hand raised.
All right, so with that, I think you're looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I so moved.
I'm sorry, it's been removed from the consent calendar, so it's not on the consent calendar anymore. So the motion now would be to adopt the draft resolution. And if you are so inclined to state that it's exempt from CEQA, that would be welcomed as well.
I move that we adopt the draft resolution and that it be considered exempt from CEQA.
And all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None? All right. With that, we adopt the draft resolution for 2088 Paradise Drive. And we move to our first item on our public hearing, which is 283 Cecilia Way. The way the format will work for all of the items this evening is the applicant will have the opportunity to present for 20 minutes. At which point we might have some questions, but we will definitely provide the public an opportunity to speak. Each individual will be afforded up to 3 minutes to speak. If you could clearly state, first of all, if you could make sure you use the microphone, but clearly state your name and address when you begin your 3 minutes. We'll have a timer going. We'll ask everybody to please stick to your time or less. After the public has a chance to speak, the applicant will be afforded the opportunity to come back up, address any of the concerns that might have been raised. The applicant will have 5 minutes. And then at that point, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the design review board. And we'll do that same format for all 3 of our items on this evening's design review board agenda. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Are we ready?
So thank you, board members. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk to you again about 283 Cecilia Way. It's been a long road, and you know, honestly, the intention today was to basically agree to most of the changes that were requested by the neighbors. And so we're going to go over the many steps we've taken to try to do exactly that. So okay, so for there were really at the last meeting, there were basically two categories of concerns. One was neighbor concerns, and then one were board concerns. And so what we're going to try to do is address each of these concerns on a elevation by elevation basis. So on June 1, there was concerns about the shadow of the clear story peak, which is right here. The location of the mini split condensers, which is right in the middle. Sorry. It's maybe easier over here. And the location of the Hydroloop unit, which was right here, and the height of our windows along the side of that elevation. So we did agree with the neighbors, and we reduced the clear story peak from 16 feet to from 1711 to 16 feet. And then we basically, if we did that, we'd have to we'd lose our clear story windows on the side of the peak. So we voluntarily lowered the roofs on the in the back 9 inches. We did look at trying to lower them 12 inches, but unfortunately at the time we were considering using a truss system to do the roof system, and we couldn't go full 12 inches because we needed that space to build the roof system as planned. So additional changes moving forward on that same elevation side. There were sound concerns of the mini split condensers. There's sound concerns for the hydro loop unit and the height of the windows. And we moved the mini split to a location that the neighbor had suggested, which was 7 feet 10 inches from the front eave, as illustrated right there. And then we lowered the roof heights in the front by also 9 inches. And the reason why we did that, not 12 inches, because since we lowered the other roofs 9 inches, if we lowered the front roofs by 12, it would have exposed the sides of the hydro loop, the mini split condensers by an additional 3 inches. We thought, since we were using the two roofs as an additional buffer for sound, that would be something they would want. We lowered all the window heights as requested to 7 feet from 8 feet. We removed the hydro loop closet from the side of the house. We removed the water heater closet from the side of the house, and we agreed that all the bathroom windows would have privacy glass. So this is the final elevation of the east elevation as proposed today. And then the other thing too is there was a discussion about the fence, and the neighbor at 287 said that with the lowered windows at 7 feet, they were satisfied with the 7-foot fence. And so this is an illustration of the fence relative to the new house with the lowered windows. And we had the fence surveyed, and so this is a surveyed fence line on the plans here, and so illustrated in yellow, and pretty sufficiently covers most of the windows. As respects to there was a comment about the garage and why do we need a 11-foot garage? Well, we have an 11-foot garage in our current house right now, but we agreed to lower the garage roof from 11 to 10. And we did move the hydro loop into the closet, into the garage in a metal cabinet here. It's not shown here, but it's actually going to be fixed to the wall. And then we're having a metal cabinet fabricated with insulation around the hydro loop unit. We don't think it's very noisy, but noises come up a lot. So we're making sure that's going to be insulated. We're going to spend the money to do that. The solar battery units are going to be inside the garage, not on the outside is most common. They're going to be right there. And then the electric water heater, we've been putting a lot of things in the garage, and we just really haven't figured out exactly where we're going to put the water heater. It's probably going to be a on demand or in whatever kind of heater. But we don't know exactly where it could be. It could be in one of our closets for all I know. In my previous house, we used to have it in the kitchen, in a unit off the kitchen. So I just don't know where it's going to be right now. As respects the some additional notes that are reflected here is here's the mini split condenser again at the 7'10" from the front eave as discussed and was recommended by their neighbor. And then we sloped the eave roof and lowered the front by 9 inches. And that way, actually the mini split condenser was actually allowed to further nestle between the two roofs on either side by another 4 inches. We did reduce the entry height from in the entry from 9 feet to 8 feet. And then we talked about this last time, but we're going to have pendant lighting in the clear story or the great room, so that there will be no direct light coming off the great room into our neighbors' yards. So on the west side, we had similar concerns. Height of the clear story roof peak, location of the mini split condensers was discussed. A garage window, which was right here. Oh, sorry. The garage window, my wife's office window right here, and the height of the windows overall, which were 8 feet, and then a privacy glass for the bathroom window. So we have reduced the clear story peak from 17 to 16 feet, as mentioned. It was the mini split's been moved up to 7 feet 10. We removed the garage window as requested by our neighbors. We reduced all the window heights to 7 feet instead of 8 feet, and we have installed privacy glass or noted privacy glass both on the bathroom window and on this glass window of the garage door, that area there. And then we had also proposed an amendment to the fence to address Carrie's office window issue. Likewise, we had the fence surveyed, and the current fence looks like this is the profile of the fence, and it covers most of the windows, whether we move forward with the fence additions or not. So on the west elevation, this is what we had proposed to our neighbor, was that we would add this 5 foot 1 inch section onto the front. and 24 feet to the back, because the neighbor had mentioned the fact that the current fence has been damaged or needs to be in disrepair. And so both the front portion and the back portion would help stabilize because we're going to use concrete foundations. But my understanding is that petition for the fence has been so far waylaid because we don't have the permission from our neighbor to do that. So on the front, this is illustrating what our original proposal was. It was a 17-foot peak of the great room with our solar panels in the front, with 8-foot windows and 8-foot garage, 8-foot front door. On our June 15th, we intended to reduce the clear story to 16 feet, and we moved the mini split condensers to the middle as recommended by our neighbors. And then we reduced the garage and master roof heights by 9 inches, as mentioned previously. And then after a number of comments that came before the June 15th hearing, we went back and looked at our numbers again. We decided, well, that we'll reduce all the doors and windows and the garage door to 7 feet from 8 feet. And then I mentioned the thing about the sloping of the front eave. And so that's, we lowered the front eave by 9 inches. And then once again, the mini split condenser is moved at 7 feet, 10 inches from the front eave. And because it's on that sloped roof, it's further nestled down by 4 inches. Now, if the board believes that we need to reduce the two roofs by 12 inches instead of the 9 inches as proposed, we're okay with that. Just understanding that by reducing that additional 3 inches, we're going to basically be exposing the mini split condenser by 3 inches on either side. And well, once again, we're agreeable to doing that. As respects the front landscaping, we added a climbing fig because of Jim Mellott's comments about just another white building. So we thought we might add some visual interest by having a climbing fig on the front garage and the front master suite. And it also break up the mass of the two portions of the building in the front. But to be honest with you, my architect hates it. So, we're not entirely sold on that necessarily, but it's one solution that we think addresses the concerns. We added the Chilean mesquite tree in the front, several feet off the front. And the intention there was to provide immediate shade for that front master bedroom window and some privacy for that room. And then at the neighbor's request, we've removed the larger trees and larger bushes and landscaping on the southwest corner of the property, including that Japanese blueberry tree. With respect to Chilean mesquite tree, this is where it is in the plan. And this is a picture of the tree we purchased. So it's already allowable to have seating underneath the tree. When it matures, the foliage is going to be more lush, kind of like that. And so, or not matures, but right now it's been getting shocked because it's moved. But when we're ready to put it in, it's going to look beautiful, and it's going to be something that people could sit in under and be nice. There has been mention about the tree and the power lines and that kind of stuff. And honestly, we're concerned about that like anybody else. But our neighbor's tree at 287 Cecilia Way is immediately under the power lines and has been that way for at least 15 years. And so if that was a major concern, I would have thought that would have been brought up some time ago. But once again, we are concerned about it. And we picked a tree that we think being pushed back from the street is going to be sufficient and not touch the power line. So we think we should feel like we should be pretty good there. I have a little bit of mea culpa here. I don't know who's responsible or whose fault it was, but Jim Fitzgerald brought it up as a concern about the SP 25 story pole, about the height, and questioned it. And we went back and looked really carefully, and we found two major glaring errors. And I don't know what professional did it or what have you, but as the owner of the property, I take full responsibility for it. And the two errors were, number one, the elevation of the house in the initial drawings showed that the house was raised up 1 foot 4 inches from the current grade at the house level, and that was never the intention. And the second thing was, when the story pole diagram went out to the engineer to measure the story poles, they used a number that was not the original intention number, which was 98.6. The original number, what it should have been, 99.24. But so let's go over some important elevations here. The current house floor is 100, which is roughly 8.9 feet, 5 feet versus the NAVD. Our intended finished floor is 100.57, which is roughly equivalent to these two elevations right here in the backyard. This is the finished floor at 100. And the original intended place for our 16 inches was this 99.24 that was in the front of the property. 98.6 exists somewhere in the street, and that's caused a lot of problem for a lot of people. The flood elevation, according to our soils, the person doing our wastewater management is 10 feet. I'm sorry. Yeah, the stormwater management plan, sorry, is 10 feet. And he wrote a letter saying that, you know, having it be 9 feet, 6 inches, which is about 6 inches off of what that 10-foot level is probably a sufficient compromise relative to flood. So like I said, mea culpa, we made a mistake, and I'm sorry about that mistake, but our intention is to keep the finished floor at 100.57. And I mentioned before that we couldn't lower the back roofs not more than 9 inches because of the truss system that we're going to use. And so we've abandoned the use of a truss system. We're probably going to stick frame the roof instead. And so we're going to make up that elevation difference, which is basically 8 inches in the reducing the truss, this roof thickness, as well as removing the exterior insulation that we're intended to put on the top of the roof. So we are going to build it within the story poles that you saw, even though it's our mistake. You know, we're not asking for it to be moved up or down. We're going to say, hey, look, this is our mistake. We'll own that mistake and we'll build it to that level. As respects the hydro loop has come up. And once again, the hydro loop is located in the garage in a cabinet. So here's the hydro loop, here's the cabinet. There outside the hydro loop is our 2 tanks. One's a pre-filter tank and one's a post-filter tank. And they were originally proposed right here, but one of the neighbors had mentioned concerns about the noise from the tanks and called the people from hydro loop. And so, you know, recognizing that maybe, okay, there might be some noise for that. They are underground tanks, so the tanks put in the ground with a sealed cap. It's bolted down. So we're going to propose moving those tanks under the trash cans where they can be, and then we're going to insulate those lids. So we're going to put some spray foam insulation in the lids so that they're going to be, you know, fully insulated. And we're going to see if we can add additional insulation, but we'll put no less than 1 inch of insulation in those 2 roof lids. We did look at putting a concrete lid instead, and it just won't have a good seal that the plastic lids will have. And so we think for sound wise, actually the plastic is going to be better, believe it or not. There was also an item on the sheet A103, and once again, I have to apologize. I don't know how this got on here, but my architect says that it's an anomaly. It's basically it's a landscape paver from another layer of the sheet, the drawings that made it onto this layer of the drawings, and so it's a mistake and it shouldn't be on there. And that doesn't represent anything other than a mistake by our architect. There was a mention also about the fence. On page CM 101. And honestly, that was a mistake. We went through all the diagrams and tried to remove all mentions about the fence, and we just didn't catch this one. However, it is true that the fence between 287 and 283, Cecilia, will remain as is. And it's true that if the fence needs to be replaced in the future, we will agree to share the cost of replacement. Separately, we filed, as I mentioned before, for planning approval and a variance to strengthen the current fence we share with 279 Cecilia and extend it 5 feet 1 inch in front and 24 feet in back with a similar fence style and height at our cost. And it's our understanding so far that offer has not been accepted by their neighbor.
There's approximately 4 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. So another late mail concern was the color of the house being suggestion that it was black. It's not black. There's just a bad color from the image. It's the green for the plant, the foliage that we were talking about putting on for the climbing thing. So in your packet, there is also a summary of all the different changes that we've made. And also in that packet is a page talking about some of the things that we tried to address that were board mentioned concerns at the previous meeting, which was that the color choice of the house, the necessity of an 11-foot interior garage, investigating lower 12 inches. We talked about the lowering the 2 roofs, and we can do that if necessary. And then we added something about, it was also mentioned about privacy of the master bedroom in the front, and the Chilean tree was added for that purpose. Lastly, here's a summary of a bunch of different conditions. I thought if, there's been a flurry of correspondence between us and the neighbors, or that from the neighbors actually to the DRB. And we've tried to address a lot of those things tonight. And we just didn't have, we've been changing these plans over and over again to try to address neighbor concerns. And here's a summary of a number of different things that we've talked about tonight that we would accept as conditions for approval. And with that, I close.
All right, thank you. Any questions before we open it up to public? Okay. Alex, I don't.
I do just have one quick question. If you were to, you said it before, if you reduce it, not 9 inches, but the 12 inches,
Right.
what is what's the impact of that from, you have to change something else or?
Oh, no, it doesn't change anything else. Let's go back to that slide real quick. So if we reduce the height from 9 inches to 12 inches, you see how the the mini split condensers are revealed more?
Mhm.
See, so that they're covered and then they're less covered.
Okay.
Just by that amount that we drop the roof by.
Got it. Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Have a question, Jim?
Yeah, what is the color now?
Well, it's still a white house. I know you don't like white houses, but we added the climbing fig to the front. We've been debating about whether it'd be the climbing fig or bougainvillea, which is another plant I really like.
What's wrong with coloring it with paint?
Color with pink?
Yeah.
I'm just not gonna do that. I'm sorry.
You said paint. not
Yeah,
pink.
I mean, the houses on either side of us and in front of us are all colored different. So I figure, hey, a white house is not out of place with a greenhouse on one side, a mauve house on the other side, and a greenhouse in front of us.
What color is the
You're
roof?
speaking in the microphone.
What color is the roof?
Yeah, the roof is gonna be black.
The top of the roof?
Correct. We're gonna use a black stainless steel metal roof, and it's gonna have a black trim on the sides. And the main reason for that was to, I think we mentioned it previously, was we were camouflaging the solar power of the solar panels on the roof, as well as the solar water panels on the other roof.
Are the correct pole heights there now? And have we followed all the timelines and recommendations for allowing story poles to be in place?
Yes, so the story poles are correct. They've been certified. The issue about the story poles is the fact that we just discovered our house is shorter than we thought. So that's basically what's happening. We basically is a gift of our mistake of 8 inches basically on the house size.
The story poles that are there are the correct story poles.
Correct. Those are the dimensions of the future house, correct?
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Okay.
And with that, we'll open it up to the public. We'll start here first before we go to our Zoom call. If you'd like to speak, please come forward. If you could state your name and address and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Miriam Fitzgerald and I live at 287 Cecilia Way. On a positive note, I'm happy to see that Mr. White has eliminated the 2 mechanical rooms from the east side, but we have not seen the new location of the water heater yet, which we would like to know where it's going. I'm also happy that Mr. White adjusted the previous plans and placed the HVAC condensers in the correct location that he proposed at the June 1st DRB meeting. And we actually agree with him not to lower it more of the 3 inches, because then the condensers will be more visible to everybody, and so it's pretty much in soundproofing too at the same time. There was a question about the height of the story poles, which we pointed out about 5 weeks ago. As it turns out, the problem wasn't the pole heights, but the elevation numbers used to establish the 00 grade on the plans, which determined the height of the story poles. Mr. White corrected those elevation numbers on the plans, which means the pole heights are correct. That issue is now resolved, but the drawing should have been amended and show the correct dimensions of the grading and the 00. Otherwise, we're very pleased with all the adjustments who have been made, and they're fine. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any additional public comment?
I need to ask them a question about something I sent in.
Just-
Did they get the information about from the flood control engineer?
Yes, all late mail was sent to the board.
Okay, and then I didn't hear your comment about the fence. That was the fence on my side. You made a-
She was just giving the time amount that was left for the presentation.
Oh, I see. Okay, it wasn't about the fence. Hi,
Hey.
I'm Carolyn Shadon. I live at 279 Cecilia Way. And there has been a lot of back and forth on this and that while I seem to have shot myself in the foot by supporting 287 on moving that hydro loop equipment, because now the tank is going to be outside my room where my office is. I know that the town has a requirement that any exterior equipment where there's insulation talked about is supposed to have a calculation from an acoustical specialist, consultant, or a mechanical engineer. That letter has not been provided, although we keep talking about sound. So as an engineer, I would like that letter to be provided because that is the town's policy, the administrative policy and procedure. And I don't understand why it hasn't been provided for the HVAC. Also, there's a problem with the HVAC that the soundproofing is only on 3 sides. Mr. Malat mentioned that it had to be on all 4 sides to be to work. I actually would like the garage roof lowered. I don't mind looking at the HVAC on the roof, and I think that the soundproofing is the actual equipment that is designed to do that purpose, not having a house somewhat near it. So I would like the roof to be lower. In terms of the tree and existing trees in the neighborhood, we did not know about fire danger when those trees were planted in the late 50s. Now we know, and PG&E has come in and they have cut ugly V's in all the trees. So it seems to be that a more appropriate tree can be selected that does not grow 25 feet high and 25 feet in diameter. I have shown that on the plan, how it was shown incorrectly. And so my main problem here is I want him to have his house. I'm not trying to limit his house, but I am trying to protect my privacy. And I don't want to have to go to the appeal board and through the civil court process, but it looks like I'm going to be forced to on noise because I spoke to the hydro loop manufacturer and it does not have to be that close to the filtering control unit. And also I still have the problem of Carrie's window. There has to be a solution to that. The fence is actually 5 feet 5 inches. When his worker was there, I asked him to put a tape and measure it, and he did. And it's 5 feet 5 inches. So Carrie's very tall. His wife Carrie is very tall. They're going to look into my master bedroom. They're going to look into my dining room and into my entire yard. And I don't think that's fair or goes along with the municipal code, which says that privacy is a concern. So I would like Carrie's window addressed. There must be a way, and it's
We're
not
at
the
3 minutes if you
fence.
could wrap it up.
Okay, and it's not the fence.
Right.
And also the flood, I gave information from the zone flood control that you, so you all would have it.
Thank you. Additional public comment? All right, if we could go to the Zoom call, if you're on the Zoom call and you wish to comment on this application, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of the screen. And we'll let you into the room.
I'm seeing none.
All right. With that, we'll give the applicant an opportunity to come back up. You have 5 minutes to address any of the comments.
Really briefly, here's a picture.
If you could take the microphone with you, just so we're recording it. Thanks.
Here's a picture of me next to the fence that we're talking about. I'm 6 foot tall. This is the lower portion that we're talking about here. And the finished floor height is going to be roughly where I'm standing. So it's, I can't look over that fence right now. I'm very pleased with the Fitzgerald support. I really appreciate their help. And, you know, I also care about Carolyn's concerns for privacy. And there are many ways to address privacy. And we've proposed many for in the June 1st meeting, and we propose them again tonight, and we'll continue to propose them in the future if that's necessary. But basically, we've talked about replacing portions of the fence that were in question to replace it with a height of the fence of similar nature. Next to that picture I just showed you, there's an 8-foot section, there's a lower section. We could attach additional lattice work to the fence. We could attach landscaping fabric to the fence in the back if that it can't support lattice. There's a lot of different things we could do. As respects this, the Hydro Loop thing, we've given the calculations for what the rated sound is for the Hydro Loop. It's 56 decibels, which is just 1 decibel more than what's necessary at the fence line, the guidelines for the city. But we are attaching to that a rigid wall 3 inches thick in front of it, the whole front of it. So there's no sound going to pass through it in the front. And in the back, it's covered by these metal or aluminum louvered boxes, this system, and they're supposed to rate it to knock the decibel level down by 30%. And then further, the HVAC, or excuse me, the mini split units are roughly 20 feet plus from the the property line. So nestled between the two roofs, and with all these other protections, we think that the issue about sound for that is moot. The issue about the water in the, or excuse me, the 2 Hydro Loop tanks, it's something that we didn't really consider. And you know, talking to Paul about it, the sound we're going to hear is the sound of the pumps moving the water to and from the Hydro Loop system. They're going to be immersed pumps in the bottom of those 2 tanks. And once again, we think that with insulating the covers, that they'll be silent. But we're happy to talk about that further. Moving them is just going to be a lot more expense and complication. And I just think it's a practical location. We think we come up with a practical solution about how to deal with it underneath the garage, underneath the garbage tanks, and also with the lids covered. And finally, as respects to this flood thing, I can't understand why it keeps coming up, because on March 9th, in your package, that was part of the many pieces of correspondence from Carolyn to me. She said, I quote, "I also want to point out that flood problems where we are having are getting worse due to the sea level rise. I had 6 inches of water in my garage in 2014. Our property elevations are about 2 feet apart. Your house, mine, and our whole street went 2 feet underwater in the 80s. I was here, so don't believe those who say it wasn't so and can't happen again. Raising a house above the floodplain, as the Gellert house across the street did, is a very good idea. Several of our neighbors have asked me why you wouldn't do this with such an extensive remodel, and asked me, a member of the FCD advisory board, to let you know. And so I have. Review the Marin County Resiliency Report for the science and predictions." So, you know, we picked a height. We're going to be 6 inches below the 10-foot level. I think it's a pretty good, satisfactory middle of the road solution about the flood issue. I don't understand why it keeps coming up. I can give you copies of that correspondence if you want.
No, I think unless anyone wants to see it. You've got an additional 40 minutes, 40 seconds if you'd like.
You know, honestly, we've done a lot to try to listen to our neighbors, and this process has been very difficult, and it's taken a long time. And maybe the neighbors didn't like my style, and if I have any role whatsoever in the difficulties we've had, I apologize significantly, sincerely. But we're good people, we're caring people, and we want to do the right thing and be good neighbors. And we have made myriad changes to our plans from the very beginning to take into account all the suggestions and comments of our neighbors. And we hope you'll approve our project.
Thank you. Any
Okay.
additional questions for the applicant before we close the public hearing? Oh,
Just want to let you know that the photo you share with the board, you need to provide 1 copy to staff so we
Take
can
care of that. I'll
upload.
email it to you, Brandon. Yeah.
Thanks.
any additional questions?
I just have one question for staff.
Please go ahead.
There's been some talk about story pole height and when I just want to make sure I'm looking at the same thing. to confirm, grade is 0, the finished floor height is 1 foot 4 inches above grade, and the upper ridge is 16 feet above grade. Is that correct?
You just pull the plans up. to
Yeah, which
verify.
page of the plans are you looking at would be helpful?
A204 is what I'm looking at, but there's been talk about different story pole heights and mistakes, and I just want to confirm visually the house height is 16 feet above grade,
Yeah,
which is 1 foot and 4 inches below the finished floor height.
yeah. So if you look on the plans and you're looking at where the measurement is for the upper ridge and it says 16 feet, that's measured from where it says grade at curb. So that was the original elevation point from where the story poles were measured. Typically, it's not required, but typically the elevation is at the point on the property where the story pole is erected, but there, as it was discussed, there was a discrepancy, so it was all taken from the same point. So that's why it varies. That's why there was, if it may say 16 feet, but it would actually adjust and be slightly lower than that based on what the elevation is at that point. That's why there were revised plans that asked to show that grade line, and there was, I believe it was, sorry, there's a lot of paper. Late mail number 1 included a story pole plan that had an additional column that was the actual elevation, so it could show what the adjusted height is based on the elevation at the point where the story pole was.
Okay.
So the location, the configuration, the height of the story poles has not changed since they've been certified. It's just been clarified that that's story pole height is from 98.6.
Different grade. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, with that, we will,
I did have one. Just this fence height, I'm not quite understanding why there's such a discrepancy between understanding if it's a 5'5" or a 7-foot fence. Are we?
If we
are
could get you
always
to come
talking
back
about
up.
The same one or the same location of fence?
I have no idea where a 5'5" comes from. I have pictures of myself all the way along down the fence, showing there's 48 feet of fence that's roughly 8 feet tall. And then it goes down, steps down about 1 foot from there and goes to the back corner of the property where it actually drops to about 6 feet. We actually have a part of our fence application includes replacing the rear fence because it is dilapidated, it is falling over. But that it will be replaced with the same fence like size at 6 feet. So I don't know why I had the surveyor measure the fence along the fence. So that one plan that I just showed you is of the surveyor heights. I can share that if it's necessary.
any other questions? All applicants up here? No? All right, thanks. All right, with that, we'll close the public hearing portion of the meeting, bring it back to the board. Go left to right. Anyone want to lead us off? Start us off?
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to start. Thanks to the applicant in the presentation and all the revised plans. I mean, the applicant came and proposed a project a month ago at this point. And I think we, gave some pretty clear guidance. I didn't think the project was that far off from being acceptable in that state. And, I think the applicant took the feedback and went above and beyond making those accommodations for to really benefit, I think, the neighbors and add as much privacy as he possibly could without completely redoing the entire plans. So I have no problem with the plan. I think it again goes above and beyond. I think there's a lot of talk about the sound and the hydroloop system and the condensers, and the applicant has changed and moved them from the initial spots. And I mentioned this in my prior kind of comments. It seems like it's within the code of the sound code and the distance code to what's kind of specified in our building code. So it's a little hard to continue to say move away if it is within that bounds. And I think he's done an effort to try and minimize it as much as possible. I think with the fig vines, I wouldn't make that a condition. With all due respect to Jim, you know, the color white, it doesn't really offend me. You know, there are some white houses in that neighborhood already, but I think this style, it's not another white farmhouse. It is a more modern, different style. So I think it adds some character to the neighborhood of a slightly different design, albeit if it's white. So I would probably prefer to go back to the original white versus kind of the fig vines. But I wouldn't make that a condition. And lastly, I personally appreciate the addition of the Chilean mesquite tree. I brought up that I think it would be nicer to have some privacy on that walkout kind of deck onto the street. So again, I think we've seen all the revisions, a lot of revisions, and I think overall the project has come back with, you know, very good spirited to take in the feedback, make the changes to benefit everyone. And we saw that with, you know, one of the neighbors' agreements. So I would, you know, be very comfortable approving it in the current state.
Jim?
Yeah, I think the applicant has made a lot of changes for the better on the house. I wasn't insisting on fig vines, by the way. I would still rather see it as a medium value gray, green, something other than white. White gets dirty very fast and it looks dilapidated after a few years in my eye. But that's, neither of those are issues. That's just not an issue that is important here. There are two things that I don't like about the house right now. One is it creates an acoustic problem on the bedroom side for the adjacent neighbor with the Hydroloop system. And I would suggest you just move that Hydroloop system to the front yard or the backyard, doesn't matter which. It's an easy move and it takes it away from the sensitive part of a neighbor's house. The second is there's a privacy problem. The proposed house extends 20 feet beyond the houses on either side. And when you go into the backyard of the proposed house, you have the ability to look forward into the most private parts of the two adjacent houses. You look into their bedrooms, their living rooms, and dining areas. You have to do something about that. And there are two solutions. One for the bedroom, I guess it's the office room on the west side. The window that is facing west to your neighbor's yard needs to have obscure glass in it, at least above the 5-foot level, let's say. So for the top part of the window, it needs to be obscure glass. That way it doesn't become a privacy problem for your looking back at your neighbor's bedroom. And the fence that is extended into the backyard needs to have the same 2 feet of trellis on it that the current fences, the 6-foot fences have farther forward there. So that fence doesn't cause a privacy problem for your adjacent neighbors. And I suspect the same situation exists on the east side of the house. So it's not hard to solve the problems. And I would suggest we make that a condition of approval.
Jim?
No, the only concern I was left with was exactly this privacy issue. And I think, Jim, you've brought up some good points and some summary of that. Otherwise, I overall pleased and impressed with the effort that was put in to make these changes.
Yeah, so my comments, I think when I saw it the first time, I was very close to I think I needed to see a lot of the items that were part of the presentation, actually part of the plans. The slight lowering of some of the heights kind of got me to where I needed to be. I'm in agreement. Some people I think try to plant trees to solve architectural problems. This one seems like a fig vine to solve maybe a paint problem that Jim might be the only person to have. So I'd be in favor of removing the fig. And I think the the design of the home is, it's a beautiful design. I think the applicant has gone above and beyond what we've seen a lot of applicants do to really work with neighbors, make changes. I don't have I don't share necessarily some of the same concerns around the Hyperloop, and I'm sorry, yeah, the Hydro Loop and the, I guess I'm not inclined to say, pop trellises on to solve privacy problems. I mean, I think that these are homes that are, in lots that are naturally close together. And, if you're going to build to, a setback, you're going to end up with, windows and homes that are relatively close together. And I think that at least from some of the things that were done to the windows, it got me there on the privacy. So I guess it sounds like, I mean, I'd be in favor of supporting the project, as is minus a fig plant. It sounds like maybe you were in that same place, and it sounds like the two of you wanted to see something. What specifically? Or something specific that,
Just before you go
Yeah.
on, since you might be discussing it, the issues around the fence are not part of this application. So to the extent that you want to raise the fence or something like that, that's not part of this application.
additionally, something like that, I think would require, additional fence height requires variances and noticing quite a bit that I, would hate to have to revisit again. Or you mentioned the I wrote took the notes. You mentioned the Hydro Loop is a concern. Does anybody else have the concern of
I'd like to add one thing to that, which is that the idea of spraying foam for sound insulation is not accurate. I worked for an acoustics company for a little while back in Boston. Closed cell foam, which this would be because it has to be waterproof, doesn't absorb sound. When you want to absorb sound, the only thing you can do is put a fiber in there that is moved by the sound energy and converted to heat energy. It has to be a fibrous material, and it can't be a closed cell material. So whatever noise these pumps make, and it would be cyclical, it might come on in the middle of the night, it might come on and while you're on the telephone or whatever. They probably shouldn't be in a quiet bedroom area. And I just think it's important that they move it to the front yard or the backyard, where it will reflect more to the street or in their backyard pool area. Not a hard, it's not a hard motion, not a hard.
Yeah, I mean, so there was also a suggestion on moving the pre-filter and post-filter tanks to an area under the garbage cans. I'm not sure exactly what that would.
That's what they're talking about.
Okay.
Is that not?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, maybe we should just revisit. So we're exactly, I'd hate to just say, move it to some other place because they've already been moved once. I think if we were going to do it, it'd be specifying exactly where they went.
They're proposed over here. And I'm just saying, move them over here or move them back here. They're
Can you,
proposed there, which is right next to the bedroom.
Can you describe where you're
They're
discussing?
proposed along the west side of the house, near the front of the garage, which is opposite a bedroom on the other side of the fence. I'm proposing that they be moved to either to the front yard or the backyard.
So if we specified anywhere between here and here, anywhere between here and here,
Correct,
you'd be,
would
Okay.
work.
in the spirit of getting to a agreeable unanimous board, I'd be okay with basically a condition that would move the location to front or backyards.
I guess my question more is, what are the impacts of that move? Like, I don't have enough information to know if that is like very expensive, if it creates like other downstream effects. I'll ask Jim, maybe.
It's a pipe. You know, two pipes.
Yeah, unfortunately,
Yeah.
we've closed the public part. We'd have to,
Could we ask if
we could, but we'd have to open it back up. We'd also have to open the public hearing back up. And basically, so.
Believe me,
I guess if anybody feels strongly to open it back up, I,
believe me, it can be done.
Okay.
Not a huge cost.
Jim seems passionate about this.
Yeah.
He is the architect. So yeah. You know, just, I kind of look back to a meeting that I wish that I'd actually, would you guys be open to opening up just to hear, just
Yeah,
so
I
we
would.
get it right? Okay, so motion,
Motion to open up back to public comment.
all in favor?
Aye.
Right. With that, the hearing is reopened. I think it sounds like we have a question for the applicant, and we'll also provide the public the opportunity to speak.
And just so you know, we're limiting the public comment to this specific
Right.
issue. This isn't opening up to the entirety of the
Right.
entire application.
We specifically want to talk about location and.
Yeah,
sound.
once again, we're talking specifically about the Hydroloop pre and post filter tank location.
Correct.
So speaking of my landscape architect here, there's a number of ways we can add additional insulation, mechanical insulation to the hydro location underneath the trash can area by putting a wood deck there. So we'd have a wood deck that would provide a solid surface that would absorb sound, and we'd have the tank covers there. But I'm sorry, what was it? Yeah, we're just talking about a cover. We would put a sufficient insulation both inside the tank. Paul Mann, the guy who does the tanks, suggested we attach some kind of foam inside under the lid. And that's what we were trying to explain. Now, if I talked about the wrong type of foam or whatever, I apologize, but Paul and I talked about it for over an hour about how to insulate or the sound of these tanks. But we're talking about Pete Peterson and I are talking about putting some kind of additional where we'd have the tanks be submerged, lowered further, and then put some kind of a wood cover over the top of the tanks. Yeah, right.
Or mass stops sound. Is that right, Jim? Not if it bounces off of it.
It's
What's going to bounce down. But the other thing too is we also looked at putting pavers there. We could put, concrete pavers over the top of it. If that would be.
I mean, be aware of the fact that this is an issue, and I'm willing to stand down on that issue from my standpoint.
I mean, our neighborhood 85 Harriet has the same tank system right outside the 95 Harriet, in the same area between the houses. So I was caught a little flat-footed about, the sound of the pumps, because it just wasn't something we thought about. But we're not talking about the Hydroloop itself. The machine is actually going to be inside the garage. We're talking about the tanks and finding I'm sorry,
You got a pump in the tank.
a submerged pump. Yeah, it's in the tank. It's in the water. So it's just going to be like,
On and off, on and off, on and off all the time.
yeah, but it's not like a fish tank pump. I mean, it's more, comprehensive than that. And once again, we are putting some kind of we can table this thing, like come up with some sufficient plan that both us and 279 Cecilia can agree to about some future installation for that tank.
Is there a problem with relocating it to the front of the back?
Yeah, I mean, once again,
As a condition of the approval?
Yeah, we've given a lot on this, and actually the amount of trenching that's gonna be required, and we did investigate and talked about significantly having the tanks back by where the pool equipment is gonna be. But that's 70 feet of trenching and piping that's gonna go to and from the tanks and the electrical and all that stuff. It's just an enormous additional cost. So, right there, it's right close. It's right underneath the garbage cans. I mean, we thought that was a great solution.
And you don't think it's a good solution if it's next to your bedroom? What about putting?
Can
it
you
next
speak to the
your
mic?
master bedroom?
Sorry, we have a hard time hearing
Yeah,
you.
it's the
What
microphone.
about putting it next to your master bedroom rather than their master bedroom?
Well, that's not where the Hydroloop is. It was originally over on that side. In fact, was right outside of the master bedroom 2 suite. So we did have it outside our bedrooms, but at the insistence of our neighbors, we moved it into the garage. And so the logical place is to put it outside the.
Well, let's put the pumps, let's put the Hydroloop pumps then in an area that isn't next to somebody else's bedroom. That's all I'm asking. It's not a big deal to
Yeah, once again,
trench it into the front yard.
Hey, whoa, it's on-
You'll have
yeah.
your chance to speak. There's public comment still available, okay?
Once again, this is a mechanical problem. I think could be easily resolved with, insulation. And if necessary, we can have somebody come and rate the pump and rate the solution and have it be, I don't know, what's the level? I mean, the noise for my understanding for mechanical equipment is a 55 decibels at the fence. We're at the fence. These pumps are not going to make 55 decibels. So what level of noise is satisfactory? I guess that if we go and figure out what we're going to do, we need to know what the yardstick is that we measure against.
It obviously won't be 55 decibels if it's in the middle of your lot.
I'm not sure I
5
understand.
decibels at the fence line.
Excuse me,
I think-
excuse me,
yeah, so
Mitch,
ma-
public comment, you'll have your chance to speak.
I'm not sure I understand your question, Jim.
I'm just suggesting that I can't understand why you're so adamant about keeping this noise-making thing that can go off in the middle of the night next to the property line where your neighbor has a bedroom.
Once again, we can move it to the front of the yard. The question is, where is going to be satisfactory to
Your
anybody?
choice.
That'd be fine. Then we'll move it to the front of the yard. I mean, but the question is, how much further forward do you have to be? Because it's only 20 feet from the front of the garage to the front. So is 5 feet better, 10 feet better? I don't know. I need the direction from you.
If it's between two walls and you've got a sound source here, it's bouncing back and forth between those two walls.
Okay,
If it's around the corner even,
okay. Oh, we're moving.
better. If it's over here, it's better.
We'll move it into the front yard. It's not a problem. Do you have other questions?
Any other questions? Related? All right. Public comment? Please.
I did speak to the Hydro Loop, as he mentioned, to the manufacturer salesperson. I would like to say that the town has an administrative policy and procedure. He keeps talking about the fence. It's not the fence. It's on a plane to the neighbor's wall.
Is this related to the Hyperloop specifically?
Yes,
Okay,
it's related
okay.
to noise. And so that policy and procedure, which I forgot to bring with me, but it's part of the administrative policy and procedure, states how the calculation should be done. It should be done by an acoustical consultant or a mechanical engineer, not the applicant, not his landscape, not me. I'm an electrical engineer. And so I want to know, what I would be okay with it being moved to the front yard and they can landscape around it and not even notice it. I would be okay with it in the backyard. But as Jim says, it's there between two buildings. And, what I really don't understand is why we keep talking about the sound, which is in that policy and procedure. So he obviously has read it, but he's ignoring the fact of the calculation that's required to say this instead of us guessing. I don't want to guess. So I agree that it would be acceptable if he would move that to I think back by the pool equipment would be the best place. He already has piping in the ground. If you look at the diagram in my letter that has the cut sheet, he's going to have piping going back to the pool from that garage area. So this idea that he's going to have additional trenching, it's going to cost money. No, it's the cost of a pipe. And I'd like to say that as an electrical engineer, I work with sump pumps a lot. They get noisy. The older they get, the noisier they get. And that thing would be going off, back and forth. Also on the window, I can't talk about the window. Sorry. It's only the hydro.
Yep. All right. Thank you. All right. Any additional public comment? All right. With that, also, is there anybody on the Zoom call that would like to make public comment on 283 Cecilia Way? Please use the raise hand feature.
I'm seeing none.
All right. So we will again close it to public comment. I mean, for me, like if it was enclosed with an acoustical closure and put under the trash cans with maybe a condition that there's a certification from an acoustics person that it complied with the town, whatever, that gets it there for me.
Uh, Can I ask a quick question, kind of point of clarification? Our policy, which I read and I can provide a copy of, it establishes that for residential zones that a unit cannot have a maximum weighted sound level of more than 55 decibels at any point on the property line, which we've established. Just to clarify regarding certification letters or any additional documentation that's required. Section 3 says if a noise control barrier or enclosure is proposed to meet the noise standards, that's when a letter is required from an acoustical consultant or mechanical engineer. So we only require that letter if it can't meet the noise being unenclosed. So if it has to be enclosed,
Could we add as a condition, even though it's not necessarily required by the town, we could add a condition that be added?
there is a condition that reflects that it has to meet this policy. I mean, you could specify that a letter is required, but we do have that as part of the draft resolution.
Okay. So sound, no certification, sound enclosure, basically like a solid sound enclosure. That would then that would be underneath the trash cans. Yeah.
We just accepted the fact there, I thought we just accepted the fact that there was a certification letter there somewhere.
So, hey, I'm sorry, maybe back up. So
I would-
there's the conditions of approval includes what now?
Okay, so the existing condition just says, well, the language in the draft resolution says it has to come, any mechanical equipment has to comply with this noise policy. But I just wanted to clarify, in that noise policy, we only require a letter from an acoustical consultant or mechanical engineer if the unit that's being proposed needs an enclosure to meet that 55 decibels. If it meets it without the enclosure, then that letter would not be required. And that's standard for all
Okay,
equipment.
so then we could require, we basically would add the requirement if that's what we wanted to do.
I just assume add the requirement.
Okay, all right.
The requirement of enclosure, the
Of an-
requirement of.
Requirement of the certification.
Okay,
Requirement of
And we'll worry
certification.
about the
and-
enclosure. That'll take care of the enclosure if they need one.
And what would they be certifying? I mean, what specifically are you looking for that certification?
No more than 55 decibels at the property line.
So then with the letter, you're okay with or without the enclosure as long as we've got the certification?
Yes.
Good, right. Right. So, and then it sounds like we're all in agreement of removing the climbing fig? Except for maybe Jim is gonna uncover
The
the.
climbing thing.
Okay, all right. All right, so I think we'd be looking for a motion that basically has the certification and the removal of climbing fig.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead. No, please do.
So I'm just modifying its condition 9 in the draft resolution. It says all exterior HVAC rather, units and generators shall comply with the town's noise standards policy for air conditioning units. And then it provides the link. If the units exceed the noise standards at the property line, noise baffles or other sound reduction shall be required to reduce the sound levels at the property line and may require a separate design review application. So there'll be a condition added that a certification letter must be provided prior to the issuance of a building permit to show compliance with the maximum 55 decibels. Would you like me to add any language regarding an enclosure or just the letter? So as long as the letter, okay, sorry.
And then it sounded like that was that the only air conditioning unit?
It's HVAC units and generators. The policy that references is or similar mechanical equipment, but we can specify it.
Could we specify it? Yeah.
And I just want to clarify, I mean, we started this off by discussing moving front and back for the hydro loop and just want to clarify whether or not that was going to be part of the motion or anything at all, just to be abundantly clear.
I wouldn't make it part of the motion. I'd say if we have the certification, that should take care of it.
Thank you.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'm
What's that?
trying to remember the actual language. Motion to approve.
We'd be looking.
Maybe,
yeah, we'd
maybe I
looking
can,
for a
maybe I can
motion
help you a
to-
little bit. It would be a motion to adopt the draft resolution that, you know, and you can, including the CEQA findings and any additional conditions you want to add on.
trying to remember that. Motion to adopt the draft resolution to include the condition of providing a certificate of
Certification.
certification of the noise.
Certified staff.
Yep, and
I'm sorry, you gotta be clear. Certification of the 55 decibels at the property line.
line of the hydro loop system. And
Removal of.
this is
fig tree.
exempt from CEQA,
And we remove the fig tree.
and the removal of the fig tree condition,
Planting fig.
fig vines.
Fine. And then you said CEQA, right?
And yeah.
Category exempt from CEQA?
Yeah.
All right, is there a second?
Awesome.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. With that, the motion passes, or the draft resolution is adopted, and we move on to our next item. All right. Our next item on this evening's agenda is 1807 Lagoon View Drive. I do believe that we have a board member that will need to recuse himself due to his proximity to the application.
500 feet.
300. 300, isn't it? 300 feet recusal, 300, within 300 feet for recusal or 500 feet?
You know, it kind of depends. I'd have to know a little bit more facts here, but if there's a concern, you might want to consider.
Yeah,
Not me.
I didn't know if it was a definitive thing. Some cities are definitive and some aren't. Yeah, okay. You
So,
guys okay without a break?
so if you're recusing, board member Rosner, can you stay up there and make your statement about your recusal and why you're recusing before you go?
I will recuse myself from this project as live within the minimum distance,
300 feet.
300 feet of the property.
I don't
Great,
think he
thank
is.
you.
But I actually don't think he is, but if there's any question, I understand.
You're good.
We measured it.
Like getting out of jury duty.
all right, whenever you're ready.
Oh,
Or
great.
does anybody need a break? Jim, Yep, all right. Yep, whenever you're ready.
What's that? Yeah, hi, good evening. My name is Jeff Pastor, and we purchased 1807 Lagoon View. It would be a year ago, September 25th or 6th. The first thing that I did after purchasing the property was go back to a design review board meeting that you had with the previous owner, Mr. Beniars, back in March of 22, so a little over a year ago. And I watched from cover to cover about an hour and a half of that meeting. And I don't know which of you were not on the board at the time, but there was a lot of pushback from neighbors substantially regarding views, but other issues as well. So what we did is I went and met with many, many neighbors, some of them multiple times, in order to first understand what their issues were and their concerns and see for myself. Next, we did some designs and talked with some of the neighbors who would be most affected by those and got their feedback and went back and redesigned again. And then we redesigned again and were ready to submit back in about March of this year. And we had some neighbors who still were not content with what we had done. That's when we got the idea to take the garage and move it underneath the house in order to push the whole house back into the hillside further. Did you all get to the house at all or neighbors? Okay, good. That'll save us a lot of time. In doing so, we created the need for a variance because now, while the house will be 23 and a half feet out of the ground as it exists today, and that created the need for variance because with the garage underneath the house, a straight line up from the garage to the master bedroom is a measurement of 34 feet. And so exceeding 30 feet, not that we went up at all, we went down, but that number created a variance by the definition of height restrictions. So with that, we did another plan, as I say, to put the garage underneath and allowed us to move things back and allowed us to maximize many of the views involved, to the point where we got agreement with some of the neighbors who were most affected. With that, let me give you a couple things that we did here, a few things that we did. As I mentioned, we moved the house backwards, back toward the hill and hillside, and the upper floor more than 20 feet back, so substantially from the previous design. And Sean will show all this on the screen that he will share with you. We eliminated view blockages, many view blockages by doing this, even beyond the god-awful borrowed view, primary view, regulations or suggestions. I think there's probably a better description. We added mature landscaping to screen for both visual and sonic effects, which people have brought up as well. And other things that we did is to really look at the landscaping in such a way, individually by neighbor, to understand what issues may arise. Because a lot of times you don't know till you're actually standing on the existing property as it is there to eliminate any privacy issues. And so we are working with them and will continue to work with them throughout the building process. This is not ended here. We're continuing to work with the neighborhood as we go along for that. Now, what I'd like to do first is introduce members of my team that are here today. Sean Bailey, who I think you know as an architect, and also Jeff Junkston, general contractor. And on Zoom, Junkston Construction, on Zoom, we have Jay Bear, an associate of Sean's, as well as Jim Bradnini from Bradnini Landscaping in Mill Valley, and also Tim Nardell, land use attorney, in case any legal questions come up from San Rafael as practices. What I'd like to do before turning it over to Sean is to respond to the 8, I believe, letters that came in post the package going out, briefly, given you've seen the house, so that you can understand, and some explanation might help in your understanding of what we've done. The first letter is from Len Rifkind on behalf of the Sherwoods at 1805 Lagoon View. And very simply, we agreed to accept the conditions in this letter as part of a conditional approval of the plans. The second letter from Al Gaduti and Cheryl Woodford of 1818 Lagoon View Drive, and they're directly across the street from us, down the hill. Al expressed, and I met with Al several times, and Cheryl, and he is concerned about noise, as a lot of people are living on the hill. All I'd say about noise from a pool is there's a pool to my left. There's a pool to my right. Al has a pool. The people to the right of Al have a pool. And above me, there is also a pool. So if mine's noisy, maybe theirs is as noisy. I don't know. I honestly don't see that as an issue. And we've added very dense plantings as well, Indian laurels. I have 20 in the front lining the driveway, and also more in front of the property as well to help with sound, as they actually do help with sound, whereas most plants don't. And then we have other very, very large 15-gallon plants coming in at least 6 feet tall that will visually hide any of the pool facing as well. The other thing I would say about sound is that, and I believe sound travels up a hill more easily than it travels down a hill. And witness of that is if there are any music or concerts on Main Street, when you're up in this area, it seems like they're right next to you. And the other thing that I would reference is the beloved pickleball courts, and the pickleball noise is it's in everybody's face as it comes from the Belvedere courts that, and that just traveling up the hill. Letter number 3 is from Clyde Wilson at 1844 Mountain View Drive. So he is up 1 and over 2 houses to the west. I saw the letter and I met with Clyde on Tuesday evening to better understand his concerns. First question I asked him is, could I go out and take a look and see what you see? And he hesitated a little bit and appeared a little uncomfortable. And I said, can you actually see the house and or the story poles from your house? And he responded, no. He said his real concern is having a house 34 feet tall in the Hill Haven area. So understandably, you see a 34 number, it's easy to imagine, even with story poles. I mean, you can imagine what it would, it could be something really towering. I explained to him, as I just explained to you, that it's only 23 feet above ground, as we're setting the first floor, which is in the current house at 100 feet elevation, at 97 feet. So we're going down 3 feet for the first floor. And then the garage is another 8 feet down lower, the floor of the garage. So those 11 feet, 34 minus 11, it's 23 feet out of the ground. And I measured it today just to make sure with the story poles. Once he understood that, then I believe he was feeling okay. The next letter from Robert and Kathleen Kadosh, who are here today. And I met with them and explained that when we live on a hillside, we do see roofs. I mean, I see 9 roofs from my property today. And it's important to note that they were kind enough to let me go out on the deck and take pictures. And you'll see some of them in Sean's presentation, that no views of the city, the Golden Gate Bridge, or water, what we would consider the most important views, are blocked. And in fact, all they do see is my roof and a little bit of it. I also.
But I just wanted to make you aware that you have it sounded like you had a presentation from the architect and a few people.
We do.
Afterwards.
I'll be out in no time. Yeah. I just find it a little odd that they want me to trim trees, which I trimmed before, so they can see more of the house, which they don't want to see. So quickly, TJ Levert, next door to me, we have a shared driveway now. We have taken the step of actually creating our own driveway so that we can give up that shared driveway, which is a tremendous financial and lifestyle advantage to them. Obviously at significant cost. I met with TJ last weekend because he was concerned that I might be able to see from our house his deck where they often dine. As it turns out, we can't. We spend about a half hour from every angle and realize that you can't see it. Again, TJ expressing noise from my outdoor fire pit area. There's a fire pit area from 1860 Lagoon View, which is above me, and it's 20 to 30 feet from the property line. It's not a problem. And in fact, here are some photos and they're in the presentation. So if we need to get them to you separately, so, but on the front and back of that, and that's looking at that, we're right down below there. But it's not a problem, and you can see the gorgeous fire pit area there. That's for their beautiful house. This last one. Let's see. Oh, from Joy Ho at 1801 Lagoon View. The pool will not be visible from the street at all, and please see the landscape plan there with the mature trees and plants. And also, if the Sherwoods at 1805 Lagoon View are okay with this new design, why should Mrs. Ho have a problem on behalf of the Sherwoods? Now we come to the Zacks, and I've met with Diane. We've gotten along well. I trimmed the trees for them. She had a wonderful 50th birthday party that she hosted for a friend, and I trimmed the trees for that. Now, in looking at her concerns, this is all I'll say, and it's just a difference of judgment. I respect Diane, and I just met Howard tonight, and I'm sure I'll respect him in time as well. But if you look at her photo, I'd like you to make the judge that's included in the process. You take a look and see whether that is impacting one's view, because it doesn't affect the bridge, the water, the city. It only, in essence, substitutes my roof for the roof across the street that you see, which is the Spanish roof. And so I leave that for you guys to make that judgment with your expertise. And with that, let me now turn it over to Sean. To be quick. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Thanks to the board for hearing us tonight. I'm gonna speed through the presentation here, and I always like to thank Christy because she worked so hard to get us here. So I brought this project before the board March 2022. It was a pretty clear kind of back to the drawing boards hearing from both the neighborhood and the board itself. I think the resounding hope was to push the house further to the rear yard because it preserves views for the neighbors uphill as well as the adjacent sides. I believe it was board member Mallett brought up a fundamental issue with the current driveway and garage. It took up a lot of real estate at the rear of the yard, and we had been clinging to keeping that. So this new design went away from that, as Jeff mentioned, by pushing the garage down.
You may need to turn on the side.
It is on.
Oh.
There we go. Okay. I'm going to skip through this one. Let's go. It's just going back and forth between the first two. Can I just say next slide to you guys? Okay. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the site plan. You can see that it's the upper level of the house is the most important for the views, and it's pushed essentially right back against the rear yard property line. Next slide, please. The red envelope here represents the current existing house. The purple outline is what we had proposed back in March 2022, and the blue outline is the current proposed upper floor, so you can see how much we pushed it back. Next slide, please. A couple quick pictures of the story poles. I think hopefully these show that in context, it's very in keeping with the neighborhood fabric in terms of scale, and hopefully show how much the upper floor terraces back. Next slide, please. So lower level, as Jeff mentioned, we're digging this down some 9 feet below natural grade. It's a fairly modestly sized 2-car garage. Next slide, please. Again, the red represents the current house. So this level more or less sits in the same area, but it is pushed back a little bit. This house has 1 bedroom, but primarily living spaces that all open up to the patio out front. Next slide, please. And then the upper level, which is the one that we push back substantially, is 3 bedrooms. Next slide, please. Landscape plan, I think the big thing to hit here, Jeff spoke, but a lot of investment in full growth trees. I know there's been concerns brought up about the pool, but we feel this landscaping plan will essentially hide it from lagoon view, people walking, neighbors below, and make a big difference on acoustics. Next slide, please. Material palette, we're proposing a fiber cement fascia that would be a light gray, a warm gray. There's a couple limestone, or excuse me, travertine tile walls that sort of are accents that bring in the entry, and then some Western red cedar vertical slat walls. Next slide, please. I'm going to go next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is an important one. Jeff spoke on the height limit. We are asking for variance, which I never like to do, but I think in this case, it really allowed us to push the house back, which is a huge benefit to the neighbors. So the red dashed line indicates natural grade. And you can see the only, even with, the variance, it's a very small portion of the primary suite that sticks out of that building envelope. The ceiling heights are fairly modest. We're not asking for 16-foot ceilings here. And again, we're digging down to try to help get the overall height down. Next slide. Quickly here, this again just shows the neighborhood fabric, plenty of two-story homes of similar size, plenty of pools. Next slide. Next slide.
Just
Next-
so you know, you got about 2 minutes to go.
2 minutes. Okay, good. Next slide, please. Okay, so 1805 Lagoon View, the Sherwoods, back in the hearing in 2022, to me, and I think the board, they were the neighbors most affected by the proposed massing. And to Jeff's credit, he understood the process and understood kind of what needed to be done. And I believe we have tentatively struck a condition of approval with them. But we essentially worked backwards from a view corridor. If you go to the next slide. So we worked with their architect, Brad, and from the back bedroom there, we sat together and picked a view corridor and basically redesigned the whole project around that. So I believe we've gotten to an agreement point with them. You'll probably hear from them tonight. But to me, they were the neighbors that really had a legitimate concern about view blockage, and hopefully we've solved that. Next slide, please. This shows the light blue was the old massing. You can see it has moved back almost 22 feet. Kind of went over that one already, but I think it's not a push back 2 feet thing. This was a substantial change from what was previously presented. Next slide, please. And this is if the tentative agreement with the Sherwoods was to push it back 2 feet further at those two lower bedrooms. This is a quick plan that shows that Jeff is agreeable to. Next slide, please. 1860 and 1850 Mountain View. I suspect you will hear from them. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but there are some photos from each of their properties we'll go through quickly here. So next slide, please. This is 1860, the lower level. The house sits right behind those trees. There is no view blockage at all. Next slide, please. The upper level, as Jeff mentioned, I have sympathy for them. There's construction right next to them, but I think it's important to distinguish. This is a roof blocking another roof. The water, the Golden Gate Bridge, the city skyline, there is zero blockage of that. Next slide, please. Similar 1850, who you hear from, have similar concerns. Next slide. You can barely see it here. And again, it's not taking out any water line. This is the lower level there. So, and then next slide, please. And then this again, it is a visible roof, but I think unfortunately that is part of living in this part of the neighborhood. You see roofs, and we're not proposing to block any water view at all. So with that, I'll throw it back to the board, and thank you guys for your time hearing us tonight.
Thank you. Any questions, initial questions before we open it up to the public? All right. All right, we will open it up to the public. If you have any comments on this project on 1807 Lagoon View Drive, if you could come forward, state your name and address, and we ask each individual to keep their comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, to speak to one microphone.
No,
For
well,
both of us?
yeah. 3 minutes together.
Oh, we're gonna.
Or
be
you can
very
have
brief.
three.
That's
Okay.
all we need. That's
Oh.
all we need. That's all we need. We are, first of all, Kathleen and Robert Kadosh at 1850 Mountain View Drive. Thank you so much for coming up and making the effort to come and see what we're doing here. We have lived up there for 20+ years. And the 1807 property has always been a flat 1-story structure. Now we are faced with a 2-story structure, which, listen, I'm sure at one point we're going to compromise and do all of that. The thing that really is our major point here that we wanted to come forth and speak, because I know it's been said in many letters already and it will be stated again, is the mass and the height. And when you have additional height
the mass is accentuated. So what we have there in front of us, and you can't see because the trees have not been properly trimmed, is that it's going to be a massive roof. We already have part which we've lived with for 20 years, but this is going to be a complete new addition to the other side to make it a complete roof. It's quite a massive structure to begin with, but that it's that high. So our point is to please, he's already been digging down to get a pool. And I know he says the garage doesn't count, but the building counts. And to have a second story on that building does affect us with a big rooftop and everything in front just there. Yes, our precious views are still there. It's just that it's a massive item to take a look at that's right there in your face. So every foot that he can build, that he can dig is important to us, every single foot of it. And if the variance is 30 feet, 4 feet addition is very important. And that's how I would like to leave it. That's a very important thing for us, for the effect and the accentuation of the mass of it. Thank you.
So another, I want to say about the garage that he was digging for 8 feet or 9 feet. Just under, he was digging that. Why is that deduct from the massive height all the way to the cabin? Because he all minus the 8 feet of the garage from the height, which is, I don't mind to dig for an 8-foot garage to deduct it from the massive height. And he doesn't show that he's doing that by taking a garage and building. And that he was digging for a pool. A pool, you need to dig at least 7 feet down. We're not asking to dig for the whole structure another 8 or 10 feet. But what we ask.
We're up on time.
No problem.
Well,
As much as can be.
All right.
That's what we ask.
All right, thank you.
Every little bit helps, truly. Thank you.
All right, any additional public comment?
Hi, I'm Diane Zach, and my husband Howard and I reside at 1860 Mountain View Drive, directly above 1807 Lagoon View Drive. And before I start, I just want to say, I really appreciate that Mr. Pastor just revealed that he met with all the neighbors over the past year, but he did not meet with us. And I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he didn't realize how much of the house we were going to see from our property. But we did not meet with him on the design of this house. And we did not know until the story poles went up how much of it we were going to see. And I have to object about the first photo that he took from my property, because I was generous about saying, sure, take pictures, but that picture is so misleading because those acacias are at least 4 feet higher than they're supposed to be. And by the way, he's been kind enough to trim them in the past. So did the prior owner. And the Kadoshes will tell you they've been trimmed for 20 years. So when they're properly at the proper height to preserve everyone's views, we are going to be left with seeing the complete mass and bulk of that house. You already can see it from our primary rooms and our deck, but I believe we are the most impacted now in the neighborhood by this application as submitted. We did submit a fairly thorough letter, and I urge you to read that. And for all the reasons enumerated in the letter and a few more comments, I've got a minute, I better hurry up. We ask you to please deny the requested variance of 4 feet. This house has successfully taken full advantage of the FAR square footage at 4,400 square feet. It has utilized the allowable lot coverage of 14.9% out of 15%. And there will be spectacular views enjoyed from this house, panoramic of the whole, from the city all the way around to Mount Tam. So it is going to be quite a beautiful house. I think the design is generally speaking lovely. And it has nothing, it's lacking nothing, but unfortunately, again, we are going to see the entire roof mass and bulk of this house, especially, we already can see, Brian, thank you for coming over today. You can already see it clearly, but when those trees are probably trimmed, also the pine tree that's in the picture we submitted completely conceals about 30 to 40% of the roof. That tree will be removed, of course, during construction. And that makes it worse. Okay, I have to talk really fast, sorry. As you probably know, the proposed house incorporates 11-foot 8-inch ceilings on the first floor and 11-foot primary bedroom on the second floor. And it seems like, I know that's lovely and desirable, but on the other hand, trimming those a bit would go a long way towards helping us reduce the mass and the bulk in front of us. We also, I know we just heard about excavating perhaps a little deeper underneath the garage, another 1.5 feet, combined with some reductions in the ceiling heights, together will really, really help us. And I believe there are a range of solutions here with incremental, modest, and reasonable moves that will really help take it away, the mass and the bulk, right in front of our property line. And okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry for the fast. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello there.
Oh.
My name is Patrick Sherwood. I've sat before you before. We own 1805 Lagoon View Drive. My comments are pretty broad. I begin by saying that the reference point of the previous project is, while it's tempting and it's human, it was so egregious that we have chosen not to reference it in our own discussions with the developer, Jeff, and others. We need to say that Jeff has come in and he's operated differently. He's spoken to us and I know he's going to flip this, but he's cared enough to get our opinions about things. And that's true of the neighbors. Pardon me. One of the things that is really in the comments and all of the letters that have come in late for whatever reason that seems to us to be very important in value is the cohesion of the neighborhood. This is not just a building. This is an intrusion into life on our street as we all know it. And we've lived through some just hellacious construction in our street. And one project's nearly 4 years in the making. It's a dead end street. The emergency vehicles will have difficulty getting in. So we put in our letter that we really urge the town and all of you, to the extent that you can affect this, to really enforce the construction management aspects of this project. It's really important. We have to weave in and out, and this is natural. There's pickup trucks, there's cement trucks, there's trucks of all kinds, there's millions of people, it seems at time. We got to be able to get through and make sure it's safe. And that's, and in addition to things like noise and dust and all that, this is, if this project goes ahead with all the digging and I know you're taking all that in, this is going to be a quarry. This is going down. This is going to be a mess. And I think it's important that people really think about how we do that. I wanted to also say that while the developer, the applicant, has been really very good about helping us try to maintain our views. It's the long-term value orientation about the property that we were most concerned with. I don't want to diminish the concerns that our neighbors have. I selfishly, we're going to be able to see the Transamerica Pyramid from certain views, and isn't that grand? And we really appreciate it. And we think it's important that carried on. But the issues of noise, the issues of the others' views, the issues of management of the landscaping and all the other things you heard, I don't want to diminish those just because we've had one of our boxes checked. And I don't mean that in any way to diminish what Jeff has done, but it's very important. And that, I guess that's all of my time. Appreciate what you guys do, all of you do, and you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? All right, if we could go to the Zoom call, is there anybody on the call that would like to comment on 1807 Lagoon View Drive?
Yeah, I see 3 hands. I'm going to
Right.
promote David Barker.
All right, if you could state your name and address, please, when you begin.
he disappeared. I'm going to wait until he come back and going to let another participant to speak. Al Cortini.
Good afternoon or good evening. My name's Al Gooduty, and my wife and I live at 1818 Lagoon View Drive, which is across the street from the proposed project. I did submit a letter that Jeff referenced, and obviously I'm not going to repeat everything written in it. I know the staff, from reading the staff reports, they did mention that the house, proposed house, has been moved back from the previous design, which is great. So what really concerns us is the front area. And as I wrote, what's being proposed is really a de facto living space. So it's floor to ceiling windows, open out to a pool, fire pit, barbecue area, et cetera. And so since that area doesn't exist now, it's only story poles. It's hard for me to know, as Jeff says, that this won't be visible from the street or won't create privacy or issues or noise issues for us. And the pictures that were shown earlier are from the landscaping or just from a top view looking down. They're not vertical, or I don't see that they were vertical. Jeff referenced our pool. We do have a pool, but we have a 8 to 9 foot windscreen. I'm not sure the exact height, but it's taller than I am. That is over our pool. And so I'm sure that eliminates any noise concerns that the neighbors have. We've never had any complaints about that. And I don't believe there's any windscreen that exists at 1807 proposed project. So I don't have the expertise to decide or to know whether this is going to create noise issues for us, since it doesn't exist now. And I trust that the members of the DRB will help make that determination. And thanks for your consideration.
All right, thank you.
I see David again. I'm going to allow him to speak.
All right.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. My name is David Barker. I live at 1825 Lagoon View Drive, have done for over 30 years. First of all, like others, I'd like to congratulate Jeff on working with the neighbors on this project in a way that many developers would not. However, I am still troubled by the request for the height variance. And in particular, I'm concerned that this is going to set a precedent that others are going to drive coach and horses through. The staff in the staff report gave 2 examples of other houses that apparently had height variances. The fact that there are only 2 suggests that, as it should be, they are very rare. They're only in exceptional circumstances, and that they're much less common than other variances for setback and so on. I don't know the Hacienda Drive property, but I know the 1830 Lagoon View Drive property very well, since it's across the road from me. And I know that in that case, only a very small area of the roof line was subject to a height variance, and that all or perhaps most of that was grandfathered in, since it had been there since the house was built in the 1950s. I also know that the previous owner wanted to demolish that property, but decided not to because they wanted to retain the greater than 30 feet height and remodeled instead. I encourage you, if you would, to work with the owner to see if there is any alternative to avoid a height variance, or at least to minimize it. And if you do ultimately decide to provide a variance, do it in a way that makes sure that this is not a precedent that is set for other properties. I mean, the owner knew, or should have known at the time, that this was going to be a difficult lot when he bought it. And I think that he should be willing to compromise on the size and layout of the property to meet the town's rules. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else, Christine?
I don't see any raised hand. Oh, there is one.
All right.
I'm going to allow her to speak.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hi, my name is Kira Skomer. I live at 1810 Lagoon View Drive with my family. And we are somewhat right across the street, not directly, but adjacent to the house that is across the street from 1807. A couple of my concerns. One is I think it's really is important to make sure that there isn't a precedent with setting height, making exceptions for height in the construction. So that's one thing. What affects our property and my family and all of our neighbors, everyone on this street, is the construction and the digging, the jackhammers, the noise, the dust, the pollution from the dust. I really urge the owner, the contractor, to do their diligence in assuring that we are not overwhelmed by dust and debris. It is extremely unhealthy to breathe the dust in from the rocks that are going to be dug into. I also want to just voice this right now that I really want to be sure that when the contractors, construction workers are digging, that they water the dust so it does not fly onto my property. I do not want to breathe this dust in. I do not want my family to breathe the dust in. I do not want my neighbors to breathe the dust in. We need to minimize the impact of this pollution. Very important. If there is a way, I don't know what the time frame is with this digging for the pool, digging for the garage. Lots of digging into the rock here. It's going to be very noisy. I don't know what the time frame of the digging, what that time frame is going to be, but I'm hoping that that will not be done in the spring and summer. We spend a lot of time outside. I do not want to hear the digging and breathe in the dust in the spring and the summer. We are the two times that we are outside of the house the most often. So please, I don't know how we can assure that care is going to be taken with the digging, but it's going to be major. And one of the other neighbors pointed out emergency, all of the trucks and
We're at
cars
2 minutes, so if
parked.
I could just
We
get you to
need
wrap
be-
up.
Okay, we just need to make sure that our street there's not traffic on our street and that we need to get through.
Okay.
And so thank you very much.
All right, thank you very
Bye.
much. All right, any additional public comment?
I see no hands now.
All right, anybody else here in the room before we bring it back to the architect or the applicant? So the applicant now has 5 minutes to come up and address any of the concerns that were raised.
I've asked Sean to try and bring up a couple photos that I think are critical for you to be able to make your decisions. Now, you did see the property. I suspect you saw everything pushed into the hillside. But let's look at what this really is. So this is going to be looking at the property as if you were at Lagoon View, but close to the height of the building. Okay, it's taken by a drone. Let's see here. Let me see. There's a couple of these. That one right there, that's a good one. Okay, let's hold on that for a while. But can I take the microphone and walk over?
Yes, please.
Okay, I just have to bring it back though, right? So the point is, and this is what you need to judge on, and it's a judgment call, obviously. But here are the story poles here. These are the acacia trees, which I trimmed about 3 months ago as at the request of Diane Zach specifically, and the Kadoshas, and to bring it down to its previous cut, because you could see its previous cut line. It has since grown back somewhat. But what I want to point out is that you can see here's the fence. Whoops. There's the fence line going across the property of the Zacks. That fence belongs to the Zacks. And you can see that the story poles of the house are below the fence, their own fence line, and well below the level of their house and also the Kadosh's house. And I don't know what else you can do beyond that. I mean, that is clearly something that is 23 feet above ground. Not excessive. 30 feet is, you know, I don't know if that's statutory, but whatever. But it's clearly well below that. As we did take advantage of bringing the house down 3 feet, the first floor, to minimize wherever we could. Go to the next slide, would you two, please? And here's another slide, and this one is probably right about at the level of the house as far as the drone goes. And you can see how much below the house is above it. It really is. So I just ask that you just vote your conscience as to whether you think that this is reasonable or unreasonable. And again, knowing that no significant views are blocked, no water views, no Golden Gate Bridge, no city. And all they're seeing is some parts of a roof. Maybe, as Diane said, could they see a little bit of what's over here? Yes, but if they didn't want to see it, the acacias would cover it if we didn't cut it too. As they are weeds and as you know, they grow like weeds. Okay, with that, thank you very much. I don't know if Sean has any other comments?
Yeah, I wanted to say one more thing on the variance, because it's a very fair point. It could set a precedent in the neighborhood. I just think in this case, to push the house back and you know, propose to dig down 10 feet in tough soil conditions, it is to me a unique case where you know, the actual height from grade is what matters here for the neighbor views. So I think it is a bit of a unique case. So I just want to kind of state that again.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
You want to get the light?
Yep. Yep.
I have a question about the roof material. Most of the houses above you are going to be looking down on your roof. And so the quality, color, and content of the roof materials, probably the most important thing visually they're going to see in the house. What is it?
I think if I get you to come back up to
You
the
have to come
microphone.
back to the mic.
And I've got a question too, so let me just keep you up here for a second.
So it's a PVC single membrane roofing, and it's a medium gray color is what we're proposing. It's possible that gravel could be introduced on it as a condition. That would be something to ask Jeff, but I understand the concern.
Darker the color, the better.
The darker gravel is definitely an option.
Darker membrane material.
Okay, that
And gravel if you're going to put gravel on it, but it, you know.
darker color in general will
The
go
darker
a long way.
would be obviously better off from a reflectivity standpoint for all your uphill neighbors.
Okay, understood.
Any questions?
That's it.
Would you mind just walking us through real quick, ceiling heights, maybe starting with the garage going up, and then there's two right on the top level?
Sure. So garage is 8 feet. we wish it was more, but yeah, when you're digging down 8 feet, the whole entire main level, which is the living room, kitchen, dining, is 11'8". 11'6", excuse me.
11'6".
And then upstairs in the bedroom, the primary bedroom, just that is 11 feet, and the other bedrooms are 9.5 feet. 8'8". Wow. Sorry, 8'8".
Okay,
And it's 34 feet from the full height, is that correct?
Total height, yeah, that would be down at the garage level, but again, from natural grade, it's 25. It's 25 at its max.
and then maybe could you just give us kind of like from just a design standpoint, when you're going through the different options, like what were the design options that wouldn't require variance?
I think the simple thing would just be bring the garage back up. So it's, you know, what we'd have to look at, we've already kind of looked at it. There's a coverage thing to solve for a little bit, but there's a plan B where we would just bring it back up. But to me, it's almost more environmentally sensitive to try to lessen your footprint, your overall footprint, by digging down and getting the driveway up. But yeah, I think the other option would be to bring the garage back up, but I think pushing it down makes it a more compact house in general, which I believe is better for view blockage.
Yeah, you're well, I mean,
Yeah.
this is
The other
questions.
thing it would do is if we do bring the garage up, and that could be a plan B, that's the way it was. We took it down in order to satisfy other things and for other neighbors. But if we keep it at first floor level, that makes the driveway much steeper, which will require, right now, the retaining walls with the shared driveway side range from 1 foot at the very back of the hill to 3 feet down the hill. You know, midway, you know, anywhere near the house, the next door house. If we bring the garage back up, that's going to require much steeper grade and also much larger retaining walls.
Okay.
I mean, we could keep them within the 6 foot limit and everything else, but they would be, I think, problematic to the neighbor.
Okay, so let me ask this, what do you think the maximum that you could pull out of the house with keeping the garage in the same location, as far as from a combination of a ceiling here or a little bit of excavation?
You know, we looked at that too.
To
You know, we've tried to be extremely cooperative, and after having long conversations with Diane this week, what could we do? My preference is to keep what we have.
Understood.
Okay, understood, right. What we could do is I think we could take a foot out of the first floor. So bring that from 11.6 to 10.6. Okay? And then I think we can take, let's see, the bedroom is like 10'9 3/4, the master, the primary is 10'9 3/4, I believe. And can you verify, just to make sure?
And yeah, first of all, yeah, if you could just, yeah, if you, well, I'm sorry, if you could address the.
Excuse me, sir,
Internal height. Yeah.
We can't have this.
Yeah, so it's not a dialogue, it's a dialogue with the
Right.
design.
Internal height is 10 feet 9 3/4. We went through this specifically. I could remove another 9 3/4 to bring that down to 10 feet. Now, while doing so, there's another wing, the children's wing. Right now, that is at 8 feet 8 inches. And that's a mistake. I'd like to bring that up to 9 feet. So up 4 inches while doing this, if I make the changes. And if you require me to make the changes or suggest or whatever, that will still be a foot or more below the wing that is, well, actually that area would That wing roof would go down by 8 inches because the first floor is down a foot. We add 4 inches of ceiling height above. So a foot minus 4 inches
Yeah,
is
maybe
8 inches.
so maybe to re-ask the original question without going through an inch here, an inch there, like, what do you think the maximum that you could lower?
1
height-
foot 9 3/4
Okay. Without moving the ground, all right.
approximately.
All right, I think that's all the questions I had.
I have one question. Would it be possible to lower the whole platform by 2 feet?
Good question. We've looked at that. You're going into rock and we're already going, if we didn't have the garage,
No, but take the
probably could
garage
do
down
it.
too.
But take the ground, digging down another 2 feet will be penal cost wise.
Why?
Maybe Jeff, could I ask the contractor who certainly knows better than I to maybe?
If you could just
Jeff
come up and
Johnston, Junction
introduce yourself as,
Construction.
yeah.
Yeah, you're going into rock more and digging.
Jeff Johnston, Johnston Construction. Reviewing the geotech report just today, we're digging down 3 feet right now, which hits solid rock on the building platform.
On the main level.
On the main level.
Garage is below that.
And the garage is below that, so we're already hitting rock there. Hearing the neighborhood concerns, I would dissuade you from saying that digging an entire site down any further would be a good idea, given the rock. Not only the cost perspective, but extremely time consuming and loud and challenging to do so. So given that he's already accommodated a 3-foot lowering of the entire site to hit rock, going lower than that would be, to Jeff's point, rather challenging and difficult in the neighborhood.
Because you're on a promontory though, it wouldn't have any effect on the view. You're substantially above everybody else in that area.
Not talking views, I'm talking the effects of the neighborhood, which I've heard are substantial for anything, so we'd want to minimize that. Dust, dirt, rock noise, all that is going to be really challenging to go any further. So once we get down to the base elevation that it's planned currently, anything further than that will be through solid rock throughout the entire platform of the building, let alone the garage will be in the same. So if we go lower with the garage, we're going to be in rock anyway.
What did your soils report say the quality of the rock was?
It's serpentinite. It's
Serpentinite. Yeah.
So
The
it's-
whole hillside is.
the whole hillside, all
Good
it's
guess.
Tiburon is that. So it's the same thing all over, but
Well, that's pillow lava.
it's pillow lava.
So it fractures fairly easily. It's not, doesn't require, it's not like
But I wouldn't tell
solid
that-
blasting or anything.
Wouldn't tell that to the neighbors who don't want us to do that. So I'm just urging us not to suggest digging further into rock if we can at all help it.
The other thing is if we go down further, I begin to lose a fair amount of my views from the
No, you
first
don't.
floor.
No, you don't. You're way up on the.
No,
hillside there.
no, you're wrong.
I'm
I
sorry.
stood there.
I,
I'm sorry, Jim. Sir, I'm sorry, but I've stood there. We're already down 3 feet, so I'm like this. And there are many trees, Angel Island to the city and also across the street on the way to the bridge and the water there. That if you go down now 6 feet, so it's like lying on the ground, there actually is a significant difference to the view, sir.
All right, any additional questions for the applicant?
There was some discussion by several of the neighbors just about this, the mass effect of this. And a mention of solutions, but I don't believe I heard any. And I didn't understand if that was trying to work with trees blocking the roof or whatever. Did this come up in your discussion? Do you have anything you could mention tonight of what the solutions would be to decrease the mass effect of this?
Can you put up that slide again, please? Can you get the slide? That, the slides that show, when I think of bulk and mass, and even in the hillside or, guidelines, they're normally referring to the side walls and et cetera. And you don't see them. What you're seeing is, anybody will see will be a portion of the roof. And that could be eliminated without affecting anybody's views if they really wanted to, by just not trimming the acacia trees that are on my property. So I don't think there is a bulk and mass problem. You know, it's all in the eye of the beholder, but I don't consider seeing a roof a bulk and mass issue. You guys may differ, but
I may have missed some, but were there photographs presented that represent some of these views from the other neighborhoods that I missed?
from the neighbors, yes, why don't we get to those? Sean may have gone through them quickly because I was too long-winded. Okay, so this is the lower level at 1860 Mountain View.
Sir, you need to bring a mic because we have to
Sorry.
have this all on tape.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Okay. So this is a view taken from the lower level of 1860 Mountain View. You know, and then from the upper one, I think that Diane included a picture with her letter. Let's use that because I think that's an honest picture. So could we bring up in the letters, the letter from the Zacks? I think the last page is a photo. Oh, no, it's on you have it on your site because it was late letter number 5 or 6 or whatever it was. This would not be in this, can you bring it from your agenda? Can you bring the agenda up or is that not possible?
I need to have some time to do that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I think that will help for you to be able to evaluate whether it's bulk and mass or
I don't
roof.
think I don't believe anything you show us from uphill is the issue with regard to bulk and mass of the building.
Okay, so from downhill then,
Yeah.
let's go back. All right, let's go back to the plans that show the story poles looking from Lagoon View from the drone. I'm sorry, the photo, Sean, the photo that showed the drone photos. Okay, hold it. Okay, so what we're looking at is here. Now, I don't know that you cannot see, even now with this, by the angle, and you can't tell this from this photo. I apologize, but you probably can't see above or below this level. So it's not any different from this house, this house, this house, as far as bulk and mass go. And in fact, when we put in, can you go to the landscape plan, please? Go back right here. So here we have, okay, if you're looking from the street, nobody can see from here because these are tall oaks. Nobody can see from here because of these trees. This is a high up above and nobody can see from here because here we have 17 24-inch box that are 10 feet tall now that I'm purchasing. They'll sit for 18 to 24 months, depending on when we can get started before they go in. They'll be 12 to 14 feet lining the driveway. So you will not be able to see a thing from there. And here are more of them. So those are 20, which I am purchasing, that you can't see up. In addition, there are oak trees here, and we're adding one for a neighbor between them, because there may be, it's not clear yet, a line of sight to a very small sliver of their pool area.
Can we maybe retake this back to the board?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there was a question that was being asked, so.
Well, I think it's a question of bulk and mass and what you see.
Sir,
Sorry,
can you
sorry.
please sit, come back and return the mic here, and Chair Chong, if you want to take back over and
Yeah, I think that it was a question, so if we could just kind of stick to answering the question and find out if the board member
But
got,
ask
yeah.
just, Did we have a chance to see the Zach's photograph that was presented?
Yes,
Sure, like
we
see
can bring that up and, you know, if we could just try to stay focused on just answering whatever questions the board has, and not, I understand, I understand you have a project in front and you're gonna make your statements. Nothing wrong with that. I understand. I'm not saying you weren't. I'm just trying to keep us focused.
It's hard to get it on there all at one time, so you're gonna have to be patient with how we get this up. Thank you.
I cannot do both.
We can read the caption into the record so everyone's clear on it.
That's fine. Would you read the caption for me, please? On this, I know I've seen it, but I'd like to have it for the record.
So the caption of this photo said, view from the primary deck, 1816 Mountain View Drive, and B, acacias are much taller in the absence of normal trimming, which has gone undone in recent week when trimmed. 1807 will be completely reviewed. The pine tree in the center of the photo stand for removal, block the view of about 30% of the main part of the proposed roof.
And just to clarify, the pine tree is going to be removed and the trees have been cut since this photograph was taken?
The tree has not been removed and the acacia has not been trimmed properly yet.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? No. Jim?
No.
All right. With that, we will close the public portion of the hearing and bring it back to the board. Let me just lead us off this way this time.
As you can tell by my questions, I am very concerned just about the roof and mass effect of this. I understand that it does not block views. I've been out to the property on 2 occasions. I'm still not sure I saw or appreciated that as was presented this evening. But I guess I would appreciate some more clarity on that. I'm not sure I can do that without going to the property again. Like some of the other remarks from the rest of the committee, please.
Well, in spite of the protestations of the applicant, this is a building that fills the building envelope, or not the building envelope, but the allowable FAR. And it has exceptionally high ceilings. And it's a massive structure on the site. That said, it's also quite elegant in its simplicity. It's got an all glass facade on the I guess that's the southwest side. I think the color of it is going to be critical, as I usually do, particularly the roof, because an awful lot of people are going to be looking at it. I would accept 2 feet off of the building and another 2 feet down as being an appropriate amount for the building by excavation. And it would have the effect of making the driveway even less steep. I don't have a problem digging a garage into the ground on that particular side. It's kind of tucked back into the corner of the building, so it's the perceived height of the building, which would be actually at about 30 feet if we got 2 and 2, would be more appropriate for the site. And there's no harm in doing that from the standpoint of view blockage at all. It's on a promontory, it sticks out a little bit. which is why it has had a problem from the adjacent neighbor at 1805. The excavation of pillow lava is actually pretty simple because it's a fractured rock. It's not solid in the traditional sense of the word. That said, it's serpentine, so it's very dense and it has to be taken out carefully, but I think it would be appropriate to dig another 2 feet down for their platform. And fortunately, it's very well consolidated, so it wouldn't affect the retainage on the uphill side of the property. They wouldn't have to build a high retaining wall or anything. I think there ought to be an agreement in here on the acacia trees that run along the back fence, that they be kept at a certain level if they're to be retained, because they are on this property, but they affect the views of the uphill neighbors dramatically. A dark gray or black roof would be most appropriate for this. And other than that, I think I'd like to hear what other board members has to say.
Yeah, I mean, so I went out to the site, also had a chance to visit the both uphill neighbors, and see the project from their perspective. Maybe I'll start out with what I like about the project. I mean, I think the design's beautiful. Sean Bailey's always done very nice designs.
You're a sucker for
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I definitely like the design. So then it really comes down to, and I also will, I commend the applicant for working with, I was on the board when 1805 was pretty impacted by a design that was maybe best described as offensive to the neighbor. So then, you know, it comes down to like, you know, when you start moving parts around, it just starts affecting other people. The impact, I mean, for both of the uphill neighbors, I mean, they definitely have full panoramic views, right? You know, 180 degrees, or in some cases, maybe even more, of the bay. That said, this is a very close structure to them, right? And every foot matters, every inch matters. I mean, just because taking out 1 foot would be a dramatic improvement. Taking out 2 feet would be also dramatic. So then kind of where does it stop? Because it's not like you're not going to see a home there and a roof there and all that, right? I think I tend to go toward, I mean, there's a couple of feet that I want to say could pretty easily be pulled out of the structure, right? So then it comes down to going down a couple of feet. You know, I'd be inclined to maybe just like leave it up to them how, if they were to take it out of ceiling heights or whether, and I also will say that I'm very sensitive because I know this neighborhood has gone through a lot of construction, you know, and so I'm very sensitive to that, but I'm also sensitive to the fact that while the construction is a pain to have to live through, you know, a home that's permanently built there is quite longer lasting than the noise and dust. And I think there's a lot of comments made, just as a reminder, where the design review board and the building department is the one that handles everything related to you know, dust and all the controls that are necessary to build a home. So I guess I'm inclined to I think I'm kind of with, you know, because 4 feet also takes it out of variance territory, you know, and still gives, I think, a home that is almost identical with just slightly less ceiling heights and a little bit more excavation, and would be a dramatic improvement for the uphill neighbors.
If I may interject, it actually won't take it out of variance height because the garage is still going to be.
Sorry, yeah,
still
you're
2
right.
feet,
You're right.
so I misspoke on.
Okay. But yeah, I think I went into it with maybe like kind of 2 feet. You're kind of, I mean, I 3 feet. I mean, I took some pretty, I mean, maybe I could, I'm always hesitant to share photos because then town makes me send them and then they come up.
It will have to become part of the record. Chair Trump.
I will share them, but I since I was the one that was able.
You knew I was going to say that.
Yeah, since I was able to get up to, so this is a zoomed in view of the corner that's the most impactful. Right here, and you can see like it's hard to judge exactly 3 feet, but 3 feet takes it all of a sudden to now even with like another roof, right? And frees up kind of the lower view.
Yeah.
So the 30-foot variance is not
yes
a problem. It's just the finished height of the
The finished height of the building from the
building is
garage floor.
helpful If it's
Yeah.
2 or 3 feet low.
Yeah, so it would still have like, it would be then like a 30.
Yeah, 2 foot variance
2 foot.
instead of a 4 foot variance, if you took 2 feet out of the building.
What happens when the trees are no longer there?
Well, that's a good question, but the screen trees on the upper
Uh,
side could be.
Yes, just reminder, lean into your remotes and make sure they're on.
Mine's on. The screen trees on the uphill side could actually be planted by the uphill neighbors if they chose. Right now, they're on the downhill side of the fence line.
So maybe, has any of our comments,
That is helpful. I wanted to make sure that I wasn't misunderstanding that we were never going to achieve the 30 feet with our discussions tonight. It was, we were going to lower the entire roof height. It would be helpful to the neighbors, but it was never going to be, the entire height of the building was never going to get below 30 feet.
You could do that, but I don't think it's appropriate. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
not
I don't
punitive
either.
in this, but I do think that they could easily take 2 feet out of the building, existing building. You know, they've alluded to the fact they can take 9.5.
it was 1 foot 9
Yeah,
3/4
yeah,
was the
well,
number.
Okay, so let's say 2 feet.
And if you believe and as I think you've demonstrated, if you believe that does have impact on how much roof you see and again, how much mass you feel the
Perceive.
presence of, that's a good step in the right
Yes.
direction. I just want to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding you, that you're also trying to achieve less than 30 feet, because
Yeah, no, I think, so I think where I was going with it was like, right now, the plans have a elevation of the highest point of the roof. And if we said that elevation just needs to be 4 feet lower.
If it said, yeah.
Right, so like, and there's different ways that they could get to that by either, lower ceilings or digging down.
I suppose, yeah, if they
Yeah.
wanted to excavate 1 more feet and then.
Do
not
take 3
take
feet
as
out,
much out of-
take 3
take
feet out.
of the roof
In
or
the,
vice versa.
in the end, for me, it's the height of the finished roof.
Yeah.
Right, so. And is 4 the number?
I think 4 is the magic number for me. I mean, I would say that would be an appropriate amount, and I do think that excavating the site is not punitive on any of the neighbors. It will be a little longer excavation. My estimate is 2 weeks, maybe at the most. But, it's excavation. It's rocket science.
No,
Not
that's-
rocket science.
It does seem helpful, and I would also comment the mass of some of the other immediate houses in the area are, these are obviously big houses.
These are
in
big
that area.
houses, but
Yeah, it's not out of proportion of what else is there.
I think this one is out of proportion with its current sort of heights, but I don't think it would be if you took 2 feet out of it.
Okay.
Perhaps you guys could discuss a little, maybe focusing in on the actual variance findings and discussing a little bit briefly about them would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that based on the hardest variance finding for me is self-created hardship, but I think that in this case, it's the location and the siting of the neighbor's existing house that forced them to kind of go to this design as opposed to the original one that we saw.
And the fact that the site was a ledge carved into the hillside.
Right.
And it already had a pre-existing uphill, downhill steepness with a flat spot in between. It's the only place to build a house on the site.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, I'm able to make the findings for all 4 of the findings for the variance.
I could do that too.
Okay, so maybe before we go to the full 4 feet, because I guess I am sensitive, the construct, like, would 3 be enough for you?
No.
Okay. All right, so in that case, so I think that what I would be looking for is the current finished height is it one elevation of 122? So we basically just be looking for a condition of
I'm not
approval.
sure what you're taking that off.
I think it's. So just so we're not gonna open up the hearing again. Can I get from staff
Yeah.
what the current elevation of the
Top 4.
top roof? Yes.
So according to A 4.2, there is a section of the building. The top pole of the top floor is at grade elevation 122 feet.
122. So 4 feet would be a new grade elevation of 118. Is that right?
122. I don't, oh, okay, I see that. It actually says top of the upper roof is 121.8. I don't know what we're measuring other than that.
Which sheet are you looking at?
122. It wants to be then 118.
Okay. Yeah, 118 is, so maybe just, I'd like to just, open just to ask the architect one question, if they would prefer an approval with this condition or a continuance to bring back another design. Is that?
Sorry, you are not allowed to speak
Yeah.
right now. It is that.
I just want to make sure, because it sounds like we're, I was trying to get to, an approval with a condition that got, I think, something that the board was okay with, but maybe there's a desire to pull out the garage instead or something like that. So,
If there's an indication that they'd prefer continuance, or we can, so that it seems like they don't want a continuance and they want to have a decision. Yeah, it seems like that's the
Okay,
indication.
alright.
So maybe it wouldn't be worthwhile taking a opening back up.
okay.
And I do want to clarify that if you are going to reduce the height of the building, it may mean that they may not need a variance. So you have to indicate whether you can support the variance with your height adjustment.
Yes.
My understanding is that since the garage is tucked under the house, if we pull 2 feet out of the house, that doesn't get us out of variance territory. And if we push 2 feet into the ground, that still doesn't get us out of variance territory, because the variance is for 30 feet or for
34.
feet. That's 30, and this
So
will still
the-
be 32 if we take 2 feet out of the house.
Yeah, so again, it really depends on the adjustments of that you are proposing on height. It may affect the variance.
But they've asked us to go ahead and make a proposal, so we can make a proposal. Or
Yeah, you
make a-
can.
Make a.
And also
conditional
indicate whether
approval.
you can make the finding.
Right, I can still make the findings.
I
for
can
the 2
still, yeah,
feet.
I can still make the findings for 2 feet. It's less than, yeah. All right. Do you want to take a stab at a motion?
I move that we approve the plans.
The draft resolution, I think. you meant.
I'm sorry, we approve the draft resolution or the plans with the condition that the house be lowered 2 feet from its existing configuration, and that the overall structure be dug into the ground 2 more feet.
So just in the spirit of giving the applicant the opportunity to kind of juggle where they need to, like, I prefer that we just basically say that the elevation goes from 122 to 118, and then they can pull it out wherever they want to.
I'd rather not, because I'd like to see them. build.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I
you
guess,
cannot speak at the background.
I guess for me, yeah, I guess for me, just giving for me, the biggest thing is just the impact of the height of the building. And if it comes down because they want to go really deep and keep ceiling heights versus, or, the opposite, take out a lot of ceiling heights, go to, 9.5 foot ceilings and not go down. Like, I just feel like it gives them a little bit of flexibility, but still gives us what we need to for the uphill neighbors.
Well, depending on how we structure this, theoretically, then they could just dig down 4 feet.
But in the end, that's still,
Build
but
the
that-
house 4 feet higher or not.
no, they wouldn't be able to, because,
No, they wouldn't.
yeah, it would not be able to exceed 118, yeah. So then they can kind of balance what they want to do, and gives them some flexibility. And still accomplishes what we want, which is the whole structure
We
from
want
a,
to see the structure smaller.
yeah, the structure will go from being its current 122 top elevation to 118.
Okay.
And they might accomplish that by, shrinking ceiling heights or just going down from a, digging down, or a combination of both?
I'd still leave it the way I said it.
Yeah, I feel pretty strongly that
Okay.
giving the applicant
right.
some flexibility.
I'll give it.
Okay.
And before you go on, Planner Fong has something that she wants to point
Yes.
out that, before we forget when we're making conditions, because there were some agreed upon conditions that were discussed and mentioned during the presentation. We want to make sure. It seemed that those were intended to be, included.
Those conditions were
Which ones are you referring to?
approximately 1'6".
So the conditions was referenced in the applicant's presentation, which it shows on the screen right now. I think it was a discussions with the property at 1805 Lagoon View. Yeah, basically it's included in the first letter in the late mail.
Okay, with that, I would modify then the language to read with accepting the changes agreed to with 1805 Lagoon View
That's documented in the first letter.
as adopted in their first.
Unfortunately, I mean, I think this is a good start for our motion, but I want to make sure we understand what these specifics are.
Good point.
So, we were, perhaps you guys can continue on your discussion, and while we try to iron out exactly what we understand those conditions that they have agreed to that were presented tonight, while you guys discuss maybe more of the other details. Does that work?
Yes.
That works.
Okay, well, one of the other conditions should be, I believe, that the roof color be at least a 75% dark gray or darker. And the exterior color of the building be at least a 50% gray on a grayscale. Not necessarily gray, it can be any hue, but a 50% gray on a black and white scale.
Do we have a materials board for, this is for the next one. Do we have a materials board for this?
The material board is outlined in A0.2.
0.2.
A0.2.
I think the fascia material is supposed to be this exterior plaster. And it says light gray, and I think it should be a medium to dark gray.
Yeah, so we should have a.
Chair, I was wondering if it would be worthwhile to just have like a 5-minute break, a week, of figure out what those conditions are and come back. That'd be really helpful because we're
Yep.
trying to do too many things at one
Exactly.
time.
We'll take a 5-minute break to 9:50.
9:50. Okay. And board, just want to remind you, we're at a public meeting. When we're breaking apart, please do not discuss anything.
Yes. Thank you. All right, we're going to come back from the break here. Pick up where we left off, which was if everybody could take their seats, please. Pick up where we left off, which was a motion. That
So, yeah, so
includes some additional items.
maybe what we can do is I can explain the motion that or the agreement that was discussed prior to year to be added as a condition of approval. And we would recommend that you include this as your condition of approval, is to add items 1, 2, and 3 from that are described in late mail number 1, which discuss the relocation of the story pole, the deck dimensions, and landscape mitigation. There is a 4th item in there on the late mail number 4, but it talked about construction management plan, which is already included in our conditions of approval. It's just adding a strict adherence, which we already have strict adherence to that. So it would be adding those 3 items from late mail number 1. And I'm gonna read each one of them as we recommend you accept it, so it's a little more clear. Because number 1 talked about story pole when really we should be talking about a corner, because that's actually what the effect is. So relocation of story pole, but it would be relocation of the southwest corner of the upper level represented by story pole number 16 on the architect's story pole plan sheet A2.4 is relocated 2 feet to plan north so that the Sherwoods retain a view of the Transamerica Pyramid from their southerly facing bedroom window. And then the other 2 items 2 and 3 on that late mail would remain the same.
Okay.
And that's because that was agreed upon beforehand and proposed by the architect during the presentation. And if it would help, I could read the other 2 if you'd like me to.
I mean, but no changes to the other 2, right?
No changes to the language that were proposed.
Do you think you got it?
I'll help.
Okay,
You're a pro at this now, Jim.
I am adding to the elements of the
Maybe to start you off. And if you,
add items number 1, 2, and 3 of late mail number 1. Relocating the corner poles of the upper level.
relocating the southwest corner of the upper level represented by story pole number 16. Relocated 2 feet to plan north and as described in late mail number 1. Is that what you mean to say?
That's what I meant to say.
Okay.
It's on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah.
All right.
And with the additional conditions.
With the additional conditions that have already been mentioned, but can you read those back to us the way you have them? Or do you wish me to?
If you could
do it again?
restate them since we've had the break, it'd be helpful.
That the building be lowered 2 feet in the structure of the building.
Can we do the elevation? I feel, yeah, so basically that the finished roof
Finish
lowered
roof be
from
lowered,
122 to 118.
what he said.
Finished roof lowered from 122 to 118.
Correct.
And that approximately half of that amount be from the structure of the building and the balance from the excavation of the site. I'm sorry, that's what I'm saying. That's what I agreed to.
Sorry, you
Sure,
cannot speak.
Sir, you really, this is a lot, please let the board deliberate and make their determination.
I guess my feeling on it is that if it's lowered 4 feet, in the end, it's the improvement of it's the lessening of the impact of the uphill neighborhood.
Because the building mass will get bigger if they squeeze 3 feet out into the.
Can you be sure to speak into the microphone too? Sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't agree with that because if they decide to build the building mass higher, the massiveness of the structure is at issue here also. So we're solving two problems. We're lowering the site and we're lowering the building, the mass.
So for me, the mass was not a concern. It seems like it was a concern
It's
for
a
you.
concern to me.
Was it a concern for you?
If the ceiling lowers, I think that solves, it's one.
Please speak to the mic so we
Jim,
can
I
hear
think
your
you need to
voice.
Speak in, thank you.
Is that if the whole ceiling is lowered, it contributes to solving the problem of quote mass.
Yes.
So I like the simplicity of just saying we're going to pick a 0.4 feet lower. I'm not sure I understand why it matters if it's 2 feet deeper or 3 feet deeper or 4 feet deeper.
I've said approximately because I think they should have some leeway there. But the concern I have is I don't want to see a building. Let's just say for purposes of argument, they grow the building or leave it as high as it is and take all 4 feet out of the site. Then you've got a giant building sitting on the site.
Again, my only concern is the view impact for the uphill neighbor, right? Like from a building
That's
standpoint,
not
the
my
side.
only concern.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the mass of the building too.
I interpreted mass of building as mass of roof impacting visualization.
More than that, it's also from below, it's from the sides, it's from adjacent neighbors. It's gonna be a big structure there.
And I guess I feel that the likelihood of going down and both losing view from upper floor, like if just going straight 4 feet into rock, I just don't see the applicant just reasonably doing that. Like I think that between the expense of it and the fact that it's going to impact the views from the ground floor, I guess I just think that reason will probably prevail and they'll probably pull a couple feet out of the house and a couple feet out of but as opposed to trying to specify exactly how many inches or whatever.
I'm not specifying that.
Yeah.
Excavation is a lot cheaper than building. It's just not that expensive.
I just want to also say, I would strongly encourage you not to use words like approximately. I would say either, how many feet, how many inches you want from each, or to say at least this much.
Okay, at least 1 feet 6 inches of the change in height from the structure of the building. And the balance.
In the spirit of not being here till midnight, they had already said they would do 1 foot 9 3/4. That was the possibility out of the building. So I'm fine. If you're.
I guess if I would accept that since I don't understand the I guess what they can do beyond that. I don't know if there is a solution, so I would accept.
So 1 foot 6 inches out of the
in
building.
that discussion.
Do we have a second for this?
This is. Can I just maybe summarize where or Christie, maybe do you want to summarize where we have this motion at this moment? So we make sure we're voting on the same thing. Or I'd be happy to do it. It's up to you.
I can try.
Okay.
All right.
And you could reference it because the motion's on the table, okay?
All right, so the first motion is to acknowledge the late mail number 1, the items 1 to 3 in regards to the first item for a southwest corner of the upper level is relocate 2 feet to plan loft so that the Sherwood can retain the view of the city. The second items on the first late mail will remain as part of the motion. And the third items as referenced in late mail 1 will remain as part of the motion. And when it comes to the discussions of the height of the proposed building will lower the finished roof from 122 feet to 118 feet. And within that, there will be 1 foot 6 inches lower the over height of the building.
A minimum of.
A minimum of. And I don't know as part of the motions whether the roof color and the color of the building is part of the motions here. Okay, so to add to the motion, in addition to the height, the building is required to have 75% dark gray roof color. The second motion is the exterior color is at least in this 50% gray shade range.
Yes.
And I hope I can't, I'm sorry, you cannot
So,
speak.
so just like, are you saying that you want a different color than what's already?
I want those materials to be darker than they are.
So that's the motion on the table and the board may be able to
This
vote.
building will be seen, this building will be seen for miles. The
So-
lighter
so
it
Jim-
is,
so
the
Jim,
more.
I guess
farther
here,
it's seen.
the struggle is we all went through the first round and we did comments and the color wasn't mentioned, right? And so.
Yes, it was.
to-
Yeah, I
to-
mentioned it.
Okay. I apologize if I missed it, but I
I
didn't
was
hear it
looking at,
until
I was
it was,
looking at
you were
their
coming to
sheet.
doing a motion for it.
Yeah, this-
And I don't, I guess I am okay with the color as presented in the color board.
What I see is this, the lightest color they have is on the fascias and the frontal part of the thing. What it happens in sunlight is this light gray that they're talking about, and it says light gray, turns white. Everything turns about 30% lighter in direct sunlight, maybe 40%. So effectively, you've got a white outline for this building. And I just think it's inappropriate on a hillside to have light colored buildings like this. You
I guess
put,
that's-
put white curtains behind the windows and they turn white.
Yeah, I guess I'm not one, I mean, the applicant, along with the architects, has presented what I think is a beautifully designed building from colors and all that. So I guess I'm not inclined to just throw on
Okay.
kind of a
Vote
condition of
against it.
approval that is a color that we haven't even seen
Well,
for consideration.
it's a grayscale color, so it doesn't have to be gray. It could be pale brown, a tan. It could be green. It could be whatever, but at least it's a little darker hue than this stuff. I mean, I have to say, I feel more strongly about the color than I do about the size of the building. It's imperative that we not build white buildings on these hillsides. They stand out like searchlights from 20 miles away.
So Jim, how do you feel about the color?
Wasn't brought up, but that wasn't brought up by anyone else, so this is the first time I'm really thinking about what, do you know what the current grayscale?
It's this one right here, yeah.
If it's travertine, it's about 20%, maybe 15.
And you want it to 50.
I want it to 40 or 50, yeah. I mean, it's not such a big deal. There are buildings out here that are dark charcoal gray and brown and.
Yeah, but I think that, again, like, I don't think it's our job to specify the exact color of
I'm not,
everyone's home.
I'm
I
not doing
think-
that. I'm specifying the shade of it. That's all.
And I guess I agree with you on the roof because that's impactful to an uphill neighbor. But as viewed from other neighbors, like, the neighbor that would probably see this more than anybody else is 1805, and there was no mention from that neighbor. That's who's gonna see the side the most, right? But most of the street traffic it's high enough up on the hill that you're probably not even gonna notice it. And yes, you will look, I mean, I look directly across at this from my house and it's not gonna bother me. Like this is my hill. Like when I went out and took pictures, I was literally taking pictures of my home on the other side. So like
It's like an eczema on the hillside. I mean, you've got spots all over the hillside.
we'll just have to
What's
disagree.
the lowest number that has impact, that avoids impact like this on a
About
hillside?
50%. You have to imagine it in direct sunlight. I mean, it's gonna turn white if it's much less than that.
again, there's, I think, mixed materials, it's part of this that it's not gonna just turn white. So. So let me, yeah, I mean, you have the motion on the table, like, I guess. I wouldn't vote against it because I'm not one to hold up the project. I guess the question is, if you don't feel strongly about the colors, then we need to for a, to pass a motion. So would you support a motion that didn't have the colors? Or that didn't have a change of the colors, that basically accepted the colors as presented?
I would accept either motion. I want to see this pass.
Okay, so
Well, my motion's on the table. Do I get a second?
I'm not going to second it because I intend to do another motion after this one potentially doesn't pass. But again, I could be in the minority. If Jim wants a second and you guys want to vote, then it would pass. That's that.
I guess I will try to take Jim's leadership and experience on this. I will second that motion.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. For the simple reason that I think there was a design that was more in line with what the applicant was wanting for a home design.
He's gonna sell it anyhow, so we're left looking at it for the rest of our lives.
All right, so on that note, we will move on to the next item on this evening's agenda, which is One Acacia Drive. If the applicant could come forward, you have 20 minutes to present your application. If we could also grab there's our other board member. Welcome back.
We still have a meeting going on, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jared Polsky, and I'm here with my associate Kathleen Heberman. We're Liz and Yale's architects, and we're also here with John Merton, our landscape architect, and Glenn Dirth, our civil engineer. We could go through the slides. They're really part of your package. First of all, we're not asking for any variances. No setbacks, no height limit, no floor area, no covered variances, and the house is designed to current planning codes. Maybe we could look at the 3D.
You have a
Can I move
clicker
it?
there and maybe you can try if it works.
Which way? Oh, back, but
Makes no sense, but this down arrow
That goes
actually
forward.
goes forward.
okay. I just want to go quickly through the images. Probably the best image is 3D projections. From the offsite views. No, I can't read. We followed the hillside design guidelines. We've broken up the massing. We've used horizontal elements that terrace on the hillside to integrate the building with the site. We set the second story 23 feet back from the edge of the first floor and 7.5 feet back from the side of the first floor. Again, following the design guidelines. Turn on the light. So the upper floor is back 23 feet from the lower floor and in 7.5 feet from the side. So it's stepping in like the design guidelines for hillside development suggests. We're proposing a variation of materials and finishes that highlight the massing and the articulation of the massing. We think the design fits in well with current development trends, somewhat, I guess, a little bit like what we talked about earlier. Scheme with a contemporary styled home. We feel it's compatible with the other hillside homes in Tiburon. Yale and Liz and Kathleen and I met with the adjacent neighbors who live right here, the McCombs. at 1010 Field Road early in our design process. We visited their house. We showed them our 3D models. We have a 3D computer model of the design, and they were in full support. The new pool follows the existing contours here. However, one corner of the pool terrace, this one corner, projects it out into a steep portion of the site. It will be well screened from below, and its height quickly diminishes as it dies into the slope. John Merton, our landscape architect, is here to explain. And Liz and Yale are here tonight and would love to introduce themselves. And I want to keep it short because I know this is getting late. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and we can go through the rest of the pictures that you have in your package.
Is there any questions? Nope.
Nope.
All right. With that, we'll get plenty more time, but we'll open it up to public, see if there's any comments, and then bring it back up if we have any questions. All right. If we could, if there's any public comment for this application for 1 Acacia Drive. If we could also go to the Zoom call to see if anybody has any comments from the Zoom call, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom.
I'm going to wait 5 seconds.
Okay.
I'm seeing none.
All right. With that, you do have 5 more minutes if you'd like. All right, but you don't have to use them.
Well, we can go through the images, but you have it in your package.
Yep. Any questions from the board?
None.
Right. Looks like you might have one. No?
I do have a question, just out of curiosity. What is the difference in terms of size of the proposed driveway compared to the existing driveway?
Well, the existing driveway will be slightly shorter because the garage is moving forward, but pretty much the same driveway.
Okay. There's not an increased turnaround or anything?
No, it's a little bit wider.
Okay, a little wider.
A little wider. So right now you can turn around, but it'll be a little easier to turn around.
Okay.
Were any issues brought up concerning view from any of the neighbors with you directly?
No. We're really not impacting anybody's view.
Anything else? Nope. All right, with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing. Thank you. And bring it back to the board. Anybody like to lead us off?
Sure, I can start. I visited the site on Monday, and I don't have any major comments or concerns about the project. It's it's a modern design, but the impact in the neighborhood. I think it was the first time I'd ever been in that neighborhood and getting my bearings of walking around the streets, and it's like looking to find the story poles and mentally visualize. It took a while, and I think part of that is just how the street and the homes are positioned there. So it's interesting coming from a project that was just discussed, which it's very similarly modern and but the neighborhood's so different that I don't have much of a concern about the choices or the style or the size or the multiple structures with the pool, because I think it's kind of on its own little space. So nothing that stood out to me was a concern or that I noticed, but I'd be interested in hearing if people felt similarly or.
Yeah, I think this is a great example of what we ought to be going toward. It's well articulated. It steps down the hillside nicely. It has a rich grouping of materials. They're not flashy and they're not going to shine in your eyeballs from miles away. It's nestled into a side of a hillside right next to another house that's obviously somewhat older, and a fellow named Roger Hartley used to live in it, who was a structural engineer, as I recall. In any case, I find I like the articulation. I like the separation of the two elements. I think it ought to be approved as it is.
Yeah, fine. Again, I'm glad to hear there are no problems. Looking at what is sort of your next door neighbor though, that 10 Tanville Road there, the ADU doesn't upset their view or I couldn't tell, I didn't go in their home, but it just seemed to be the only structure that might have some view issues and they do not. Okay.
I did walk all around the house and through both yards. The next door neighbor was not there, but I took the liberty of walking in their yard and it's beautifully screened. I mean, it's nicely done on both sides.
Yeah, it's hard to tell because there's so much vegetation.
Can't even see
separating
the
to it.
two houses.
I just
Yeah.
thought that if the trees ever disappear, that you do have a new structure there for
Plant
sure.
new trees.
Okay.
So-
I did, one other thing I would commend the owner on is taking out those enormous trees. I was up there in a 25-mile-an-hour wind. And it's kind of scary. I mean, those are 70 or 80, 90-foot high trees. We've got an awful lot of them in Tiburon, but glad to see that a number of them are coming down.
All right, so my comments are along the same lines as my fellow board members. I had a chance to get out there this morning, take a look at the site, see the story poles. I think it's a well thought out, nice project, and full support. So sounds like we'd be looking for a motion.
Motion for full support of the application.
I think you'd be looking for a motion to adopt, we have a
Okay,
draft, a motion to adopt the draft resolution as prepared by staff and that the project is category exempt from SEQA.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right. With that, we make sure there's nothing buried at the end.
Not always like
And with that, we adjourn.